Chapter 41. Qin Feng and the others didn't have to wait for long. When the moon was high in the sky, the group went down the Qiang mountain range. Qin Shou told Qin Feng that there were several secret tunnels in the manor on Qiang Mountain that led to the Qin family's mansion in Upper River Town. The Qin family had been in Upper River Town for hundreds of years and could be said to be the real local tyrant. Upper River Town and even the Qiang mountain range behind it had been hollowed out. It wasn't wrong to call it an underground city. However, the locations of these tunnels were very well hidden. Plus, the Qin family usually hid them very well. If Qin Shou hadn't taken the initiative to say it, even Qin Feng wouldn't have known that there were so many tunnels under Upper River Town. The underground tunnels were dark and damp, and water was dripping down from the holes above. The group walked in the tunnel. Qin Shou took the lead with a torch that he took out from his ear hole. Yu Yao followed closely behind. Her eyes flickered, and her expression was unsightly. Clearly, she didn't expect the Qin clan to be so shrewd. They actually dug out so many maze-like secret passages that extended in all directions. Yu Yao asked as they walked into the unknown depths of the darkness. Qin Feng, did you already know that there were so many tunnels under Upper River Town? Otherwise, why did you say with certainty that the Qin family couldn't be destroyed? Qin Feng was walking at the back. When he heard that, he smiled lightly and mocked himself. Yu Yao, you've overestimated me too much. In the Qin clan, I, Qin Feng, am a trash. My status is the lowest, and I've been pushed out of the circle of power. How could I possibly know about such a secret? As for why I know, the reason is obvious. As the saying goes, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. The Qin family has been in Upper River Town for hundreds of years and has weathered many storms. How could they not have a trace of foundation? Moreover, Qin Shan is cunning by nature. How could he be a martyr? Even without these tunnels, you can't destroy them, right? Yu Yao sneered. Her eyes flickered. She didn't believe Qin Feng's words. Seeing this, Qin Feng sneered and said to himself, if I were the head of the Qin family, Qin Shan, I would choose to cut off my tail and run for my life if I knew the difference in strength between me and the enemy. The forces outside of Upper River Town only want the so-called Crystal Jade Mine. Since they want the Crystal Jade Mine, I'll just give it to them. Could it be that they would abandon the Crystal and Jade Mines to pursue the retreating elites of the Qin family? Hearing this, Yu Yao's footsteps paused, and a trace of gloominess flashed through her eyes. Qin Feng was right. The forces outside the city were just a motley crew. In reality, no one was willing to submit to anyone, and there was no one in control. With her understanding of these forces, once the Qin family retreated, these forces would immediately become a pile of loose sand. They would be caught up in the frenzy of fighting for the crystal and jade mines. Who would have the time to chase after the Qin family's people? Not only is Qin Feng a peerless talent, but his shrewdness are also top-notch. Just from this alone, I can tell that he is not an easy person to deal with. It will be extremely difficult to break free from his control. Yu Yao lamented in her heart, thinking of the secret on her, but even someone as emotionless as her couldn't help but feel ashamed and angry. Yu Yao no longer spoke. She was in a bad mood, and her face was gloomy. She had a cold and elegant appearance that prevented strangers from approaching her. Qin Feng glanced at Yu Yao and sneered in his heart. How could he not know what Yu Yao was thinking? Unfortunately, you are still far from the pulse condensation stage. You can't condense true power, and you can't practice any supernatural powers. Otherwise, there are countless methods to control you, and you will never be able to rise again. Qin Feng thought in his heart. In only half an hour, Qin Feng and the others arrived at the underground of Upper River Town. Qin Shou had already gone out to scout for information. He was an elite of the Qin family's law enforcement hall, and this identity was perfect for him to scout for information. At the same time, he could also bring back his family to avoid the upcoming storm. Qin Feng and Yu Yao waited in the underground passage. Since they had nothing to do, Qin Feng didn't pay attention to the black-faced Yu Yao. He just sat cross-legged and practiced the innate transmutation unity law. Ever since his physique changed, his cultivation speed had become very fast. The fourth heavenly layer of the martial path required one to condense a thread of inner breath. If one wanted to break through to the fifth heavenly layer of the martial path, they would need to condense 36 threads of inner breath in the body to form a large cycle. One thread of inner breath was equivalent to 10 threads of inner breath, and Qin Feng meditated every day. Basically, he could condense 5 threads of inner breath in a day and 1 thread of inner breath in 2 days. Calculating like this, he could break through to the fifth heavenly layer of the martial path in about 2 months. This kind of speed was very fast. A normal martial artist could condense 1 or 2 threads of inner breath in a day. Some talented geniuses could condense 3 threads of inner breath at most. Of course, this was under the condition that he didn't take the quenching vitality pill. If he took the quenching vitality pill, the speed would be even faster. Qin Feng estimated that if he took the quenching vitality pill, he could condense about 10 threads of inner breath in a day. The effect of 1 quenching vitality pill could last for 3 days. In other words, Qin Feng could break through to the fifth heavenly layer of the martial path in a month at most. As for the quenching vitality pill, Qin Feng had accumulated 5 or 6 bottles of it when he killed people. It was enough for him to cultivate to the fifth heavenly layer of the martial path. Qin Feng took out a top-grade quenching vitality pill and swallowed it. Gradually, the pill's medicinal properties bloomed and turned into a warm mass of qi. Strands of qi flowed in his meridians and passed through many meridians. Strands of qi grew bit by bit. This speed was very slow and undetectable, but it was very impressive. After Qin Feng broke through to the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path, he had a thread of inner breath. After 2 days of cultivation, the second thread of inner breath had already been condensed. Now, the third thread of inner breath was gradually reaching perfection. He was only a little bit away from 10 threads of inner breath. Every time he condensed a thread of inner breath, Qin Feng felt that he was a little stronger. After an unknown amount of time, Qin Feng felt a warmth in his meridians. The 10 threads of inner breath intertwined and turned into a thread of inner breath. It warmly shuttled through his meridians, and his strength increased. Gently exhaling a mouthful of turbid qi, Qin Feng opened his eyes. In the darkness, his eyes were faintly shining. He felt a little regretful and thought to himself, "This speed is still too slow. If I had the crystal diamond and absorbed the purest spiritual qi, my cultivation speed would be at least 2 times faster." In fact, Qin Feng was not willing to swallow pills to cultivate. No matter how good the quality of pills was, there would still be a trace of impurities. These impurities were not very strong, but they would settle in the body and eventually affect future cultivation. The spiritual qi in the crystal diamond was the purest, so there would not be such a hidden danger. However, this hidden danger could be ignored for now. In the future, as long as he came across some treasures that could refine the impurities, he would be able to solve this hidden danger. For example, the crystal diamond in the crystal jade mine was one of them. At this moment, Yu Yao also woke up from her meditation. When she opened her eyes, she happened to see Qin Feng's eyes looking at her. For a moment, she felt as if there was a whirlpool in those dark eyes. For a moment, she was a little absent-minded. Very quickly, she came back to her senses and snorted softly. She turned around with a straight face. At this moment, Qin Feng's sword-like eyebrows twitched. His ears moved slightly as he heard movement above his head. Chapter 42. Qin Gang. Qin Feng sized up this taciturn man who had been silent ever since he appeared. He only used a pair of bull eyes to size up Qin Feng. After sizing him up for a moment, Qin Feng said with a faint smile, "Qin Gang, why do you want to follow me? You are an elite of the Qin clan's law enforcement hall. Your status is not low. You will be put in an important position no matter which young master you join. Why do you want to join me, a traitor of the Qin clan?" The tower-like man was silent for a moment before he raised his head. His eyes seemed to be bursting with a strange brilliance in the darkness. He said with a deep and powerful voice, "Ninth young master, you are a true expert. I, Qin Gang, only submit to experts. My brother Qin Shou said that you are also a mystic master. I want to become stronger, so I want to follow you." Qin Feng could not help laughing. Isn't Qin Feng, the seventh brother, a strong expert? He is known as the leader of the Qin clan's revival and the future star. Why don't you follow him? Qin Gang shook his head. Qin Feng is strong, but he only knows how to hide behind others and stab others in the back. This kind of person has some achievements, but he can only stay in a corner and can't be a dragon in the sky. At most, he is a tiger in the forest. You and young Master Qin Feng. One is in the sky and the other is on the ground. Qin Feng looked at the tower-like man with interest and said with a smile, "You're the first one to judge Qin Feng like this." Along the way, no matter if it is the Qin clan's people or other people, when they mention Qin Feng, they will always praise him or show respect and caution. When they mention me, Qin Feng, they will always despise me and show contempt or just ignore me. Below the stage, Yu Yao's pink face blushed. Qin Gang shook his head and laughed. A gloomy and cold smile flashed across his black face. There are many people in the world who have eyes but fail to see. Qin Feng was startled and then laughed. Well said. After a moment, Qin Feng said, "Follow me from now on. You will get what you want. As long as you are loyal to me, you will get what you want." Hearing this, Yu Yao raised her head. A trace of contempt and disdain flashed across her foxy, beautiful eyes. "You, Qin Feng, are only at the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path. Why are you so confident?" But why did this person say that Qin Feng is a mystic cultivator? Yu Yao's expression changed. She instinctively refused to believe that Qin Feng was a mystic cultivator, but she couldn't help but have a trace of doubt in her heart. Qin Feng looked at Qin Gang and suddenly asked, "What kind of constitution do you have that you can test your own attributes? What kind of cultivation technique are you practicing?" Qin Gang was slightly taken aback and hesitated for a moment. A martial artist's cultivation method was a martial artist's greatest secret. Unless it was someone close to them, they would never easily reveal it. But in the next moment, he raised his head and said, "Young master, I've tested my physique before. It's the gung metal physique of the 5 elements. I'm practicing the gung metal meridian breaking technique. The gung metal meridian breaking technique that I obtained from the Qin clan's Hidden Scriptures Pavilion. Gung metal physique, one of the metal attribute physiques." Qin Feng pondered for a moment and then smiled at Qin Gang. However, this mortal martial level cultivation technique is too low end. It has almost no potential. If you practice this technique, you will never be able to break through to the meridian stage in your lifetime. Come closer, I have a metal attribute cultivation technique, the White Tiger Spirit Forging Technique. This is a high-level spirit martial level cultivation technique. If you practice this cultivation technique, you will have at least a 30% chance of condensing a metal attribute White Tiger Seed. Listen, a short cultivation technique chant continuously came out of Qin Feng's mouth. Qin Gang was originally a bit skeptical and held a skeptical attitude. After all, a high-level cultivation technique was the foundation of a family. How could it be so easy to obtain? One had to know that even the Qin clan, which had been in Mountain River Town for hundreds of years, only had a middle-level spirit martial level cultivation technique, the 9-wind howling technique. Qin Feng opened his mouth and said that he was going to teach him a secret technique of the advanced spiritual martial force. This was too shocking. Qin Shou and Yu Yao on the side were even more incredulous. Qin Gang held a skeptical attitude. Although he was skeptical, he still remembered every chant that Qin Feng read out. But as he listened, Qin Gang's eyebrows gradually knitted together and his face revealed a trace of ecstasy. This chant was definitely a secret technique above the spiritual martial force level. The cultivation technique that Qin Feng passed on was mysterious and obscure. At first, he didn't understand it, but slowly, Qin Gang felt the internal energy in his body become restless. According to the chant, the circulation of his internal energy was more than twice as fast as normal. Even his peak fourth sky of the Marshall Path was loosening. He had a feeling that after a few days of closed-door cultivation, he would be able to break through to the fifth sky of the Marshall Path. When Qin Feng finished reading the last word, Qin Gang's face turned solemn. He restrained the strange expression on his face, and in front of Qin Shou and Yu Yao's shocked and incredulous gazes, Qin Gang tidied his robes and prostrated himself in front of Qin Feng. "Young master, thank you for teaching me this cultivation technique. I, Qin Gang, and my descendants will remember this for generations to come." As soon as these words came out, it was like a clap of thunder that shocked Qin Shou and Yu Yao. It was true. It really was an advanced spirit martial level cultivation technique. After the shock, the two's eyes burned with passion. An advanced martial technique could save a lot of time. It was the foundation of a venerable family and a sect. This kid is so lucky. Young master passed him an advanced spirit martial level cultivation technique. He is so lucky. Qin Shou stared at Qin Gang with envy written all over his face. Although he knew that it was his good brother who had benefited, he couldn't help but feel jealous. An advanced spirit martial level cultivation technique was too precious. I'll have a chance in the future as well. As long as I follow the ninth young master and make contributions in the future, the ninth young master might be happy and bestow me with such a cultivation technique. Qin Shou comforted himself. Even so, his heart was still sour. Yu Yao's face darkened. Originally, she was disdainful and thought that Qin Feng was just trying to please the crowd. Who would have thought that Qin Feng would casually take out an extremely precious advanced spirit martial level cultivation technique? Yu Yao's face was gloomy. At this moment, the technique she was practicing was only at the middle stage of the spirit martial force. This was the most precious secret technique of the Yu family. In the Yu family, other than her, only a limited number of direct disciples were qualified to practice this secret technique. However, today, in front of her, Qin Feng had casually given a technique that was even more powerful than her family's cultivation technique to a guy who had just joined them. This made Yu Yao jealous, but more than that, she was furious. Although Qin Feng didn't do anything to her, she felt as if someone had stepped on her head. It was as if he was saying, "Look, what you think is precious is not worth mentioning in my eyes. I can buy it as I wish." She was just a self-righteous clown, especially when the person who stepped on her was Qin Feng, who she had always looked down on. This feeling made Yu Yao feel extremely uncomfortable. This was Qin Feng's usual style. He did not follow common sense and did things according to his nature. He liked to go tit for tat and express his love and hate. If you said that I was trash, I would beat you to death with my fists. If you looked down on me and liked to step on my head, I would cripple you and step on your head every day. If you scolded him as if he was worthless, I would stand there and disgust you. I would make you sad every day, unable to eat or sleep. I can't figure it out. Qin Feng saw the subtle changes in their eyes. He gently smiled and helped Qin Gang up. After a while, he said with a meaningful tone, "I, Qin Feng, have always been fair in my rewards and punishments. In the future, as long as you follow me, you will have many opportunities to receive techniques like today. The only prerequisite is that you must work for me loyally." "Yes, ninth young master." Qin Shou's eyes turned red as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He immediately responded loudly and wanted to dig out his heart. Chapter 43. Qin Feng did not stay in Upper River Town for long. After asking about the situation of the Crystal Jade Mine, Qin Feng led the group towards the abandoned Crystal Jade Mine. Coincidentally, the abandoned Crystal Jade Mine was not far from here. At the same time, the elite disciples of the Qin, Yu, and Song families of Mountain River City arrived at Upper River Town almost simultaneously. The situation outside Upper River Town was becoming more and more treacherous. A storm was brewing, and undercurrents were surging. A storm was brewing. The geniuses of the various families all had their own ulterior motives. Some were openly, and some were covertly forming alliances. 2 hours later, these families all made their moves, and the bandit from the Iron Ridge mountain range were surrounded. Above, blood flowed everywhere. The underground was also not calm. Qin Feng's group slowly approached the Crystal Jade Mine. Qin Feng's decision caused the others to be puzzled. The Crystal Jade Mine might be precious to some forces like the Qin family, but to the four of them, it was of little value. They knew that with just a few of them, it was impossible to occupy this abandoned Crystal Jade Mine. Qin Feng, what is inside this Crystal Jade Mine that attracts you? You know that this Crystal Jade Mine is a dangerous place, so why do you insist on going in? Along the way, Yao had already lost count of how many times she had asked this question. Qin Feng's stubbornness angered her greatly. At this time, this abandoned Crystal Jade Mine had already become a dangerous place. Many forces had their eyes on this place. If they went in now, wouldn't it be like pulling chestnuts out of a fire? It was extremely dangerous. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Feng had something on her, Yu Yao would have already given up. When they were approaching the cave where the Crystal Jade Mine was located, Qin Feng suddenly made a hand gesture and his footsteps stopped. Their expressions changed, and they extinguished the torches in their hands at the same time. Their bodies flashed and disappeared into the darkness. Soon, the sound of footsteps came from the dark cave 100 steps away, and a bright flame emerged from the depths of the cave. A figure suddenly appeared from afar. Strange, I clearly saw a flame here. How did it disappear in the blink of an eye? Another voice mocked. You're too nervous. Are you hallucinating because of the enemy outside? The first voice snorted and said with some dissatisfaction, We'd better be careful. Although only the core members of the Qin clan know about these secret tunnels, this place is connected to all directions, especially that abandoned crystal and jade mine that was recently excavated. I've heard that evil sounds often come from those abandoned ancient mines. It's said that something evil has already escaped from there. We've lost contact with a few of our brothers. We'd better be careful. The sound of footsteps got closer and closer, and a group of 4 or 5 people appeared in the tunnel. These people were carrying weapons and holding torches high. They were very vigilant. That's right. I heard that the 7th young master and a few other young masters have already entered the ancient mine to investigate. My sweetheart, who works beside the 7th young master, is a popular girl. Once, she heard the head steward and the 7th young master say that there seems to be a very important treasure in the ancient mine. What kind of treasure do you think there is in that abandoned Crystal Jade Mine? Another voice suddenly said. The last voice whispered, You've also heard that the brothers who excavated the mine found a few good things in the underground mine. It's said that they are divine weapons left behind from ancient times. The first voice said disdainfully, Nonsense, it's just a few ancient weapons. However, the quality of the weapons is very scary. I don't know what precious spiritual materials were used to make them. Those broken weapons could actually easily cut through the elite cold iron that our Qin clan smithy had tempered thousands of times. The last voice snorted. That's still amazing. If I could have such a weapon, my battle strength would at least increase by half. Furthermore, that's just the collapsed entrance. Who knows, there might be a complete ancient weapon inside. The second voice lamented. It's a pity that we have to patrol and activate the mechanisms in the tunnel to deal with the enemy outside. We can't enter the mine to try our luck. Stop complaining. We'd better prepare well. It won't be long before the enemy outside attacks. We have to hold on until the reinforcements from the Shana City Lord's family arrive. Accompanied by a few complaints, the rustling of footsteps gradually faded away. Qin Feng flashed and appeared at the place where the few people walked past. He thought to himself, Strange. Why would there be weapons in this abandoned Crystal Jade Mine? Could it be that there was a battle before this mine was abandoned? It seems like I have to be more careful when I enter. Qin Feng had a bad premonition. It was as if there was something scary in the Crystal Jade Mine. Qin Feng's face turned gloomy. The Qin clan's people have already entered the underground Crystal Jade Mine. The next person to appear in the darkness was Yu Yao. Her beautiful face revealed a trace of anxiety. Hearing that the Qin clan had already sent people into the Crystal Jade Mine to investigate, she couldn't help but worry. If there were any treasures in the mine, wouldn't the Yu clan fall behind the Qin clan? especially the ancient divine weapons. The divine weapons contained terrifying power. Even if it was a low-grade divine weapon, if the Qin clan obtained it, not only would they be able to resist the invasion of the other forces, they might even be able to use it to wipe out the other forces. Yu Yao's eyes flashed with a trace of deep worry. However, she couldn't leave to report. She could only hide this trace of worry in her heart. On the other hand, Qin Shou and Qin Gang were eager to try. Which martial artist didn't look forward to the day they could obtain a divine weapon? It was just that divine weapons were rare, abnormally rare. The underground tunnels extended in all directions. It was cold and damp, and there were terrifying mazes of mechanisms everywhere. If it weren't for Qin Shou and Qin Gang leading the way, even Qin Feng wouldn't dare to say that he would be able to pass through unimpeded. They quickly found the entrance. To be more exact, there were many entrances in front of them. It seemed that this place had suddenly collapsed. Many ancient tunnels covered in dust and spiderwebs were exposed. There were 3 in front of them, and there were several more tunnels that extended to the left and right. However, there was one thing in common. Every ancient tunnel was dark and gloomy. There was a strange and evil smell, revealing a mysterious, gloomy, and terrifying aura. Why is there an abandoned mine here? Wasn't it said to be a primeval crystal jade mine? Could it be that this is an abandoned crystal jade mine? Looking at the cave covered in spider webs, Yu Yao's eyes flashed with a trace of unease. Which one should we take? Behind them, the few people were at a loss. They were waiting for Qin Feng to make a decision. Qin Feng closed his eyes and sensed for a moment. After a moment, he opened his eyes. His pitch-black pupils revealed a trace of brilliance. Following the guidance of his spiritual sense, he looked towards the middle tunnel. Let's go this way. Qin Feng took the lead and directly entered. Qin Gang followed closely behind. Yu Yao's footsteps were sluggish. Her eyes flickered, as if she was thinking of something. However, the people behind her were staring at her, causing her to let out a muffled groan. She could only follow closely behind. Qin Shou coldly snorted. Qin Feng had long instructed him to pay attention to Yu Yao. Qin Shou didn't neglect at all. This was the time for him to perform. He couldn't let Qin Feng think that he couldn't handle such a small matter. The abandoned tunnel was dark and dusty. It was densely covered in spider webs. Along the way, dried bones could occasionally be seen. It was very frightening. However, there were occasional fluorescent lights on the walls. This was the light emitted by the crystal jade mine. These protruding primeval crystals were mostly small and fragmented. Even if there were pieces, their color was extremely poor. With one look, one could tell that they were inferior crystal jades. They were useless. Suddenly, a clamor came from the quiet tunnel. Ding, ding, dang, dang. There was also a complacent laughter coming from afar. Someone is coming. Qin Feng made a gesture. The few people slowly retreated to a fork in the tunnel and hid in another tunnel. After a while, they heard a voice coming from afar. "Fifth young master, our luck is really good this time. We actually found a complete ancient sword. This ancient sword is not sharp at all. It can easily cut through gold and jade. With this ancient sword, even the 7th young master might not be a match for the 5th young master." In the darkness, Qin Feng's expression changed. He thought to himself, 5th young master, isn't the 5th young master Qin Muan? Sure enough, a familiar voice sounded. This voice was slightly proud and pretended to be modest. "Don't be careless. The 7th young master is the genius of our Qin family. Who can compare to him?" The voice that spoke first was unconvinced. "I don't think so. 5th young master, you also broke through to the 3rd heavenly layer a few days ago. Breaking through to the 3rd heavenly layer at the age of 15 is one of the best in the Qin family. The 7th young master is only relying on the Patriarch's favor and the accumulation of countless elixirs to cultivate to the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer in a short period of time. If our 5th young master receives the full support of the family, he may be even better than the 7th young master." Someone agreed. "That's right. 5th young master is the true genius of the Qin family. If they really fought, the seventh young master might not be his opponent. Fifth young master, you are the master of the Qin family's resurgence. Only you are worthy of Miss Yu Yao. Another person said coldly. Don't be happy too early. If we're to talk about the first young master of the Qin family, it might have been the seventh young master, Qin Fong. But now it might be that person. The first voice said with disdain. You're talking about that trash, Qin Fong. He is just a stray dog. What qualifications does he have to be compared with the fifth young master? Qin Muhan said coldly. Qin Wei, Qin Fong is nothing. He only got the treasure left by Qin Zhan. That's why he could reach the heavens in a single bound. Now that I have this ancient sword, it won't be difficult for me to pass the trial of the main family. It won't be long before I can enter the main family of Shana City and be nurtured by the main family. At that time, Qin Feng will be nothing. If I meet him again, I will be able to suppress that little bastard. Qin Feng hid in the darkness. When he heard the flattering words of these people, he couldn't help but sneer. In his heart, he thought that enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. When he heard Qin Muhan's disdainful words, he suddenly laughed out loud. He swaggered out of the darkness with the four people. A sentence came from the darkness that made everyone's face turn ashen. Qin Muhan, I, Qin Feng, am here. There is no need to wait for the next time. Chapter 44. Qin Feng. Qin Muhan was shocked. His eyes widened as he pointed at the four people who came out from the corner and stuttered. How could you be here? Qin Muhan's face was ashen. He couldn't wrap his head around the situation. How could Qin Feng appear here? Qin Muhan, I remember you used to call me trash. Why did you change the way you call me? Qin Feng had a faint smile on his face, but his eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. In the past, Qin Muhan had caused him a lot of trouble. In the past few years, his monthly salary had been forcefully taken away by Qin Muhan, which caused his cultivation to stagnate. Especially half a month ago, if Qin Muhan hadn't brought people to humiliate him, Qin Feng wouldn't have been seriously injured and on the verge of death. As the saying goes, new hatred and old hatred. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. On the side, a warrior at the third heaven of the martial path saw Qin Muhan's angry expression and thought that he could take advantage of it. He immediately jumped out and pointed at Qin Feng. How dare trash talk to our fifth young master like that? You don't want to live anymore. Noisy, Qin Feng's eyes turned cold and filled with killing intent. He took a step forward and used the breeze body technique. Like a swift gust of wind, he appeared behind the warrior in the next moment. Under the fearful expression of the warrior, Qin Feng struck out with his palm. With a bang, the warrior at the third heaven of the martial path was blasted away like a cannonball. Boom! The warrior's body slammed into the mine tunnel and blood spurted out. He was killed by a punch. Qin Feng's silhouette appeared in the darkness. He didn't move, but when he turned his gaze over, his killing intent was so cold that it penetrated the hearts of everyone present. You! Qin Muhan's face turned red. He was shocked and scared. This warrior was at the third heaven of the martial path like him. In terms of strength, they weren't weaker than each other. However, such a person couldn't even take one blow from Qin Feng. Qin Muhan's face was ashen. His eyes flashed with crazy hatred, jealousy, fear, and unwillingness. Qin Muhan, who had always been domineering, hated Qin Muhan to the extreme when he saw the blood of his subordinates splattering everywhere. Damn it, he's just a piece of trash. Trash should be trampled underfoot forever. Why does he have to have such power? His power should belong to Qin Muhan. I can't accept this. If I knew this would happen, I would have killed this trash completely so that he would never be able to make a comeback. I hate him so much. He screamed crazily in his heart, almost twisting it. How dare you humiliate me like this? After we leave this place, I will use any means necessary to kill this little bastard, even if I have to go bankrupt. I will not rest until he is dead. Qin Muhan's heart was filled with hatred as he squeezed out a smile to disguise himself. His eyes were sincere as he pleaded in a low voice. Qin Feng, we are brothers after all, and we both have the bloodline of the Qin clan. I, Qin Muhan, have wronged you before, but I am willing to apologize to you. As long as we get out of here, I will not only return your house on Chiang Mountain Range to you, but I will also compensate you with 1,000 taels of silver. What do you think? A trace of mockery flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. Was he trying to fool a fool? He walked closer step by step. Seeing him approaching, the few warriors of the third sky of the martial path behind Qin Muhan looked at each other with a trace of fear in their eyes. They quickly retreated and isolated Qin Muhan. Qin Feng sneered as he stared at Qin Muhan and said coldly, "Qin Muhan, cut the crap. Do you think I don't know your nature? You bully the weak and fear the strong. You rob others by force. You are a sinister and cunning person who will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. You have always liked to play tricks and stab others in the back. After I humiliated you today, you have long wanted to kill me. Today, no matter what you say, you will not be able to save your little life. Qin Feng, don't go too far. Aren't you afraid of retribution?" Qin Muhan knew that he would not be spared, so he simply tore off his disguise. He looked at Qin Feng with his red eyes full of resentment. "Go too far. I just want to go too far. Today, I will use one hand to kill you, a treacherous villain with a mouth full of honey and a belly full of swords. You will pay back all the benefits that you have taken over all these years." A cold light flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. His body rushed out like a cheetah. He stretched out one of his palms and arrived in front of Qin Muhan like an iron claw. In an instant, he grabbed Qin Muhan's neck and lifted him up. The gap between the two of them was too big. Qin Muhan did not even have time to pick up the weapon in his hand to defend himself. In an instant, his life fell into Qin Feng's hands. When Qin Muhan lifted Qin Muhan up, he could not breathe. His face was red, and he was almost suffocating. He stared at Qin Feng like a fish out of water. Qin Feng's 5 fingers were like iron claws that tightly gripped Qin Muhan. He raised his head and sneered. "See? You're just a chicken in my hands. I can kill you whenever I want. Just like how you treated me a month ago. You can hit me whenever you want. You can scold me whenever you want. But before you die, you have to pay back all the old debts." In front of Qin Muhan's fearful eyes, Qin Feng raised his hand and slapped Qin Muhan over 100 times in a row. Qin Muhan's cheeks were swollen, and all his teeth were knocked out. He looked extremely miserable. He looked at Qin Feng with fear in his eyes. "This is the old debt of you bullying and humiliating me all these years. As for retribution, didn't you tell me earlier that you were too naive? If there is really retribution, then it is your retribution." Qin Feng tightened his 5 fingers and grabbed Qin Muhan by the neck. He turned into a cannonball and bombarded the tunnel with a violent force. With a loud bang, blood flew out. Qin Muhan, the 5th young master of the Qin family, was turned into a pile of minced meat that no one could distinguish. The bloody and terrifying scene shook everyone's hearts and sent chills down their spines. The 5th young master is dead. Qin Feng killed the 5th young master. Everyone, run and report this to the Patriarch. Seeing Qin Muhan's sudden death, one of the lackeys roared in horror. The rest of the lackeys quickly fled in the opposite direction. "Kill them. Don't let a single one escape." Qin Feng was too lazy to deal with these small fries. Qin Shou, Qin Gang, and Yu Yao had already rushed over. It didn't take long for this lopsided battle to end. They were all at the 4th heavenly layer of the martial path. These guards at the 3rd heavenly layer of the martial path were no match for them. Not a single one escaped. Qin Gang and Qin Shou returned. Yu Yao's face darkened. From the bottom of her heart, Yu Yao didn't like this kind of killing. But now that she was under Qin Feng's control, she had no choice but to obey his orders. Qin Feng nodded. He glanced around, and his gaze landed on an ancient-looking and crude weapon on the ground. It was an ancient sword with a very peculiar design. It was simple and unadorned, and it was about 3 feet long. It was made of an extremely rare black gold. When Qin Feng picked it up, he could feel a cold, blue metallic texture. The body of the sword was rough, and there were dragon patterns on it. When it slashed through the air, a strange cold light flashed, and the sound of the wind whimpered. This seemingly inconspicuous ancient sword was actually abnormally sharp. Good stuff. This should be a sword left behind from the ancient era. It's simple and unadorned, and the craftsmanship is excellent. With one look, I can tell that it's an extremely high-quality sword. Qin Gang seemed to be quite proficient in weapons. Seeing that Qin Feng was reluctant to let go of the sword, he immediately went forward and explained. Well, good luck. With such a handy weapon, it's like adding wings to a tiger. In the distance, Yu Yao's face was gloomy. She was also proficient in using swords. If such a high-quality sword fell into her hands, her strength would increase by at least half. Unfortunately, she could only watch enviously from afar. Qin Feng casually tossed the other sword that he took from Feng Tong to Qin Shou and said casually, "This sword is yours." Qin Shou was startled. He casually drew the sword, and with a clang, a silver-white brilliance leaped out. Its blade was like autumn frost, and it flashed with cold light. Under the illumination of the fire, the tortoise scale-like patterns seemed to come alive. This was also a high-quality sword. Qin Shou beamed with joy. His weapon might be a long saber, but such a sword could be kept as a family heirloom. Many thanks, young master. Qin Shou was excited, and his voice couldn't help but become louder. Qin Gang's face flashed with a trace of envy. Yu Yao, on the other hand, had a straight face and was secretly depressed. Qin Feng clearly knew that among the three of them, Qin Shou and Qin Gang both used sabers. She was the only one who used a sword. He actually gave this high-quality sword to Qin Shou, who wasn't proficient in using swords. Sha-sha. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound in the tunnel. It was getting closer and closer. Soon, it was not far away. Qin Feng's expression changed. He turned around abruptly. He did not know when, but a group of strange monsters suddenly appeared in front of him. These monsters were no more than 5 feet tall. They had a dog's head and a human's body. Their entire body was black, and their eyes were green. Their claws were extremely sharp. These monsters were staring at the people in the tunnel with a very cruel, bloody, and cold gaze. These monsters emitted a very vicious aura, as if they had crawled out from hell. Disgusting saliva was dripping from the corner of their mouths. The aura that each monster emitted was no weaker than a martial artist at the 3rd celestial layer of the martial path. The largest dog-headed monster actually grew a horn, and the aura it emitted was no weaker than a martial artist at the 5th celestial layer of the martial path. Staring at them with green eyes, it was as if it had found its prey. It caused a chill to run down their spines. The number of monsters in this group was so large that it made their scalps tingle. The few of them were drenched in cold sweat. Seeing the appearance of these monsters, Qin Feng's pupils constricted, and he couldn't help but say in a daze, "Dog-headed demon, why is there such a monster here?" Chapter 45. Dog-headed demons? What kind of monsters are these? The few of them widened their eyes at the terrifying scene before them. More and more dog-headed demons were surging out from the various tunnels. It was like a tidal wave. Dog-headed demons are monsters from the earth abyss's esophagus. Qin Feng had a grave expression as he spoke slowly. Rumor has it that it is the most filthy, turbid, and dark place in the world. It is also known as the earth abyss's esophagus. It is said to be the dirtiest, most rotten, and most chaotic place in the world. Some say that it exists under the darkness of the earth. That place is vast and boundless. There are countless mysterious and terrifying races living there. They are collectively known as the subterranean demons. The dog-headed demons in front of us are called dog-headed demons. They are a low-grade race among the subterranean demons. They are located in the first of the 33 levels of the Earth Abyss, which is the level closest to the surface. They have the head of a dog and the body of a human. They are covered in scales and have sharp claws that can easily tear through flesh and blood. These dog-headed demons have extremely strong reproductive abilities and are the most common cannon fodder race in the Earth Abyss. How strange. Why would there be low-grade demons like dog-headed demons in this abandoned mine? Could there be some abyssal crevice here? Qin Feng's expression was solemn as he thought to himself. He had only read about the existence of subterranean demons in ancient books. The 33 levels of the Earth Abyss were in fact an extremely mysterious and terrifying place. It was rumored that the Earth Abyss's esophagus was filled with endless digestive laws. Even god-fiends could enter but never come out. The only thing that could come out was the digested law dregs. Unless the Earth Abyss's esophagus mutated and a crevice appeared in the Earth Abyss. Qin Feng, what should we do? Yu Yao looked at the black mass of dog-headed demons that were staring at them with covetous, greedy, and ferocious gazes as her face turned pale. As far as the eye could see, the tunnel was filled with more and more dog-headed demons. There was no end in sight, and there were hundreds and thousands of dark green eyes in the darkness. A dense and terrifying pressure of death was born, making people unable to summon the slightest bit of courage to resist. The tide of dog-headed goblins before them made them feel despair. Human, eat them. The strongest unicorn dog demon bared its fangs and growled in a disgusting manner. It stuttered as it spoke in the common language of the continent. Roar. Amidst a series of low and cold roars, short and small figures pounced towards the four of them. The dog-headed monsters were extremely fast, especially with their sharp black nails. Their claws were covered in black scales, and they glinted coldly in the darkness. Kill our way out. Qin Feng shouted in a low voice. He raised the ancient sword in his hand and took the lead to cut a short black shadow in half. Purple-black blood splashed out, and 2 pieces of the body fell to the ground. Not only did this bloody scene fail to intimidate these dog-headed monsters, but it also stimulated the ferocity and brutality in their bones. Amidst the low growls, the ferocious dog-headed monsters began to madly charge forward, like sharks that had smelled blood. Damn it, these dog-headed demons are extremely fast and bloodthirsty. Everyone, be careful. Qin Feng shouted loudly. The ancient sword in his hand turned and instantly slashed out 3 sword shadows. In a split second, the 3 dog-headed demons were killed by the waist. The swift and fierce slashes were as smooth as flowing water. Qin Feng had never used sword skills before, but his sword skills were not weak. With a sword in his hand, he seemed to have turned into a killing machine. Pucci! Streaks of swift and fierce sword light slashed out. In the darkness, they were like beautiful moonlight, emitting an evil charm of death. He and his sword blocked the dog-headed monsters that were swarming towards them like a tide in the tunnel. Hiss! What terrifying swordsmanship! Yu Yao sucked in a breath of cold air when she saw this scene. Her face was gloomy. The stronger Qin Feng was, the more worried she was. Just this sword skill alone is unparalleled among the young masters of the Qin family in this generation. Qin Gang looked at this scene with shining eyes and nodded repeatedly. He was secretly rejoicing in his heart. Qin Shou's eyes were full of amazement. These dog-headed monsters are not weak. Each of them is stronger than a martial artist at the 3rd firmament of the martial path. Moreover, their speed is much faster than a martial artist at the 3rd firmament of the martial path. If it were me, I could only deal with 4 or 5 of them at once. If there were more, I'm afraid I would die in their hands. Qin Gang said after a moment of silence. With my strength, I can only deal with 7 or 8 dog-headed monsters at most. If there are more than that, I can only escape. Otherwise, I will die without a doubt. Yu Yao did not speak. In fact, she was secretly comparing in her heart. She cultivated the gold fragmentation internal breath and was slightly stronger than the 2 of them. However, her strength was limited. At most, she could deal with about 10 of them. Yu Yao glanced at Qin Feng, who was blocking the entire tunnel with his strength alone. This guy was simply a freak. There were so many dog-headed demons. Just looking at them made her scalp tingle. Qin Feng could actually suppress them all by himself and beat them back. In fact, the underground tunnel was not very spacious. At most, it could only accommodate a dozen dog-headed demons side by side. Qin Feng did not have a hard time dealing with them. However, this situation was gradually changing. The dog-headed demons had sharp claws, a terrifying race that was extremely proficient in digging. They had sturdy scales and sharp claws, so they weren't as easy to kill as Yu Yao and the others had seen. If not for the abnormally sharp ancient sword in Qin Feng's hand, Qin Feng might not have been able to deal with them so easily. Qin Feng's arm shook and a huge force swung out. Several dog-headed demons that were not afraid of death were instantly killed. The long sword tore apart their scales and made up for their bodies. Sha! Qin Feng heard a rustling sound. He looked up and saw some dog-headed demons digging on the ground. These dog-headed demons were not very smart, but in the crowded tunnel, they instinctively began to dig a larger space. No, we can't let this continue. There are too many dog-headed demons, and these dog-headed demons are not afraid of death. If the tunnel widens, more of them will come at once. It will be harder to deal with then. Qin Feng looked around. This time, he unexpectedly found a clue. Behind the dog-headed demons, a dog-headed demon with a single horn was waving its weapon and letting out strange growls. It looked like it was commanding. Qin Feng casually killed a few dog-headed demons that wanted to charge over. He looked at this very strong, dog-headed demon. Normal dog-headed demons were not very intelligent. They only had the instinct to survive and destroy. There was no order to speak of. However, this dog-headed demon was not only faster than its brethren, but also stronger. It also had human-like intelligence that normal dog-headed demons did not have. It was commanding these dog-headed demons. Qin Feng instantly locked onto it. His figure flashed and disappeared in front of the tunnel. He took a step forward and shuttled through the dog-headed demons like a gust of wind. In the next moment, a figure appeared in midair in front of the dog-headed demon leader and slashed out with a sword. The whimpering sword vibrated, and the green-gold metal brought with it a mournful cold light. This majestic dog-headed demon leader was not low in intelligence. It felt a strong aura of death coming towards it. A human-like sneer flashed in its green beast eyes. Then, it turned into ferocity, resentment, and pride. It opened its bloody mouth and bared its fangs. A pitch-black and smelly thing came flying toward Qin Feng. Seeing this dog-headed demon's attack, Qin Feng was puzzled. The timing of this beast's attack was simply too good. It had seemed that Qin Feng had used up all his strength in midair and had yet to gather any new strength before it made its move. What a cunning beast! He was simply like a scheming and astute person. Gotcha! At the crucial moment, Qin Feng's body let out a series of crackling sounds. He was like a snake in midair. His body unbelievably twisted for a moment, and that lump of pitch-black and stinky liquid almost brushed past his clothes and shot out. Black Tortoise Yin Yang Dao, Spirit Snake Demon, Subduing Fist. Sizzle. The pitch-black and smelly liquid hit the wall and made a sizzling sound. Even the stone wall was melted into a big hole. What a strong, corrosive liquid. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. Taking advantage of this opportunity, his body was like a whirlwind in midair. He instantly closed in on the dog-headed demon leader. The long sword in his hand flashed and swept past the dog-headed demon leader's waist, cutting it in half. Chapter 46. The dog-headed demon leader's vitality was extremely strong. Even though he was split in two, he did not die immediately. His jade-yellow eyes were filled with resentment as he looked at Qin Feng unwillingly and said with the last of his strength, "Lord, priest will not let you go." Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and smiled coldly. "I don't know if you will let me go, but you're dead for sure." The dog-headed demon leader's eyes were filled with extreme resentment. His head stiffened and he died. Just as the dog-headed demon died, in the center of the abandoned crystal jade mine, in a mysterious and dark place, a mysterious existence wrapped in a black robe and emitting a dark and gloomy aura stopped what he was doing. The mysterious black-robed man was no more than 5 feet tall. His eyes were burning with a faint purple flame, and his entire body was emitting an oppressive and terrifying aura. Under his feet was a mysterious Xian formation that was hundreds of meters long and wide. Beside it were a few corpses that had been drained of blood. If one looked carefully, one would know that these were the missing elite disciples of the Qin family. This Qian formation was extremely large and evil. It spanned hundreds of meters and carried traces of indescribable evil and blood. On the ground, the bright red blood flowed along a shallow, crisscrossing path, outlining a bloody and terrifying complex and obscure diagram. However, this Qian formation diagram was not complete. The blood only covered a little more than a third of the formation. The thorn mastiff is really a piece of trash. I let him collect some blood food, but he actually killed him. A low-level existence like the dog-headed demon can only be cannon fodder. It's a pity that although the seal has cracked a little, the gap is not enough. It can only accommodate such low-level trash. A hoarse and deep sigh sounded in the darkness. Unfortunately, the Holy Son is about to be born. I cannot leave this place. The few of you, go and bring the expert who killed the thorn mastiff to me. While you're at it, capture all the living creatures that entered the crystal jade mine, dead or alive. His Highness, the Holy Son, is about to be born, and he needs fresh, intelligent blood food. Roar, roar. A few deep, beastly roars came from the darkness in response. On the ground, the Qin, Ning, Yu, and Song families had already eliminated all the bandits that came down from the Iron Ridge mountain range. After a round of competition, the families discussed and decided to jointly explore the underground Crystal Jade Mine. Because it was the Qin clan's territory, the Qin clan occupied the majority, while the other clans occupied a small portion. After learning that the Qin clan had already sent their elite disciples to the underground Crystal Jade Mine to investigate, the other clans didn't want to fall behind. That very night, they sent some elite disciples to form an investigation team to the underground Crystal Jade Mine. Underground, after the dog-headed Yao leader was killed, the remaining dog-headed Yao seemed to have lost their order. They fell into a state of chaos, and Qin Feng easily killed them off. Qin Feng stood on the spot, deep in thought. There seems to be a change underground. Demons from the Earth Abyss have appeared here. Although they are just low-level cannon fodder, like the dog-headed demon. According to the dog-headed demon's last words, there should be some big guys here. We don't know how deep this place is, and the dangers are unpredictable. It would be unwise to rashly go in. Although there are treasures like the crystal diamond inside, it's not worth it to throw your life away for a treasure. Behind him, Qin Shou and the others also had worried expressions. Thinking about the hundreds and thousands of dog-headed Yao, they couldn't help but feel their scalps tingle. If it wasn't for Qin Feng killing the dog-headed demon leader with lightning speed, the four of them might have all died inside. Let's withdraw. There should be a higher demon race here. The higher demons are extremely powerful, and they also have a terrifying innate talent. None of them are weaker than a pulse condensation period martial artist. Most importantly, their intelligence is comparable to a human's, or even surpasses a human's. This kind of existence isn't something we can deal with right now. If we encounter a royal holy son, I'm afraid we might really lose our lives here. Qin Feng said with a heavy expression. Everyone's expressions changed, and they all became dignified. The food Tao of the Earth Abyss was extremely mysterious. It was rumored that there were 9 demon monarchs. Each of them was once a supreme demon monarch that ruled over countless demons. They even managed to escape from the terrifying law of digestion of the Earth Abyss's food Tao and escaped. They were infamous in this world for a period of time. Their bloodlines had some inconceivable abilities, and their descendants would inherit a portion of their abilities. Thus, they were respectfully called royal clans. They didn't know this point, but they could feel how terrifying it was. If the dog-headed demon, which was the cannon fodder of the lower demons, was so terrifying, then the higher demons, or even the royal clans, would definitely be even stronger. Knowing that there was great danger ahead, they still continued forward. That wasn't bravery, it was suicide. Although Qin Feng was confident that he could protect himself, he couldn't guarantee the safety of the people around him. These people were a team that he had painstakingly raised. For the sake of some imaginary treasure, it would be too much of a pity to lose them all here. It was better to temporarily retreat and think about it in the future. Just as the few of them decided to retreat, the sound of rustling footsteps suddenly came from a dark mine not far away. The sound of footsteps was very dense, and in just a few breaths, a group of people walked out from the three-fork mine road. In the distance, someone saw Qin Feng's group. One of the voices snapped. "Who is it? Why are you so sneaky?" Then, the voice coldly reprimanded. "Which team of the Qin clan are you from? What are you doing? Come and salute when you see the seventh young master here. You'd better obediently hand over your harvest." Qin Feng? Qin Feng was startled, and then the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. This time, Qin Feng didn't care about his identity, and personally came to this abandoned mine. This was really great. He was going to repay the hatred of the other side for repeatedly plotting to kill him. In the distance, Qin Feng held a torch and swaggered out of the darkness, surrounded by people on his left and right. The first thing he saw was the teenager with a sneer on his face. Qin Feng was stunned, and then his face suddenly changed. His scalp was about to explode. His face was gloomy, and it changed again and again. After a while, he suddenly gritted his teeth and fiercely shouted, "Go quickly, it's Qin Feng, that devil!" After saying that, he turned around and ran. His speed was extremely fast, like a cheetah. Apparently, he used all his strength to run. The people around him were about to shout to show off their power and prestige, but when they heard what he said, they were dumbfounded. It was as if they were struck by lightning. When they saw the figure running away in panic, their jaws dropped to the ground. Was this the young Master Qin Feng who was known as the leader of the Qin clan's resurgence, the favored son of God? Unexpectedly, he ran away at the mere sight of him. They were scared out of their wits. "Idiot, that's Qin Feng, the devil who crippled the group of horrible butchers of the law enforcement hall alone in the barbaric mountains. Why don't you run quickly? Are you looking for death?" Seeing that these people were still in a daze, a warrior of level 5 of martial arts roared. After roaring, he ran away quickly. That speed was as if he had used up all his strength to drink milk. In the middle, he was afraid that he was not fast enough. Under Qin Feng's shocked gaze, he fiercely gritted his teeth and patted his chest, causing blood to spurt out. Soon, as if he had been injected with chicken blood, his speed increased sharply. He even used some self-mutilating method to burn his strength to speed up his escape. He rushed to the front like a wisp of smoke. The people behind him followed suit. Some of the warriors who knew this method of mutual destruction spat out blood desperately and sped up desperately. The sound of spitting blood rose and fell one after another. How spectacular the scene was. Qin Feng looked at this scene in astonishment. Qin Feng and the others were high and mighty just now, as if they were sure to defeat them. Why did they run away as soon as they saw Qin Feng? Qin Feng saw clearly that there were 2 or 3 warriors of level 5 of martial arts in Qin Feng's team, and 6 or 7 warriors of level 4 of martial arts in Qin Feng's team. What's wrong with these people? Why are they so scared after seeing me? They even self-mutilated. TSK, how much blood did they spit out? Qin Feng was very puzzled. Behind him, Qin Shou's face was dark. This guy still didn't know how terrifying he was. A level 4 of martial arts could kill a level 5 of martial arts in an instant. Within a few days, he had killed hundreds of elites of the Qin clan. If you weren't scary, who would be? If they didn't run, should they stay and wait for death? Qin Muhan was unlucky to have met you and was killed by you. Qin Shou sympathized with the dead Qin Muhan. He didn't even have the chance to run. Chapter 47. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feng and the rest had disappeared. Qin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Behind Qin Feng, Yu Yao's face was gloomy. Only now did she faintly feel the terror of this trash in front of her. With just a name, he was able to scare away a genius like Qin Feng. What terrible thing had Qin Feng done to make such a prideful person like Qin Feng scared to this extent? Let's go quickly. Qin Feng looked at the tunnel where Qin Feng and the rest had disappeared. His eyes looked at the other tunnel at the three-way junction. His figure flashed and swept past like a gust of wind. Yu Yao and the rest followed closely behind. After a quarter of an hour, just as they were about to walk out of the crystal jade mine, Qin Feng's figure suddenly stopped like a gust of wind. Yu Yao and the rest hurriedly stopped their bodies. "Young master, what's wrong?" Qin Shou was puzzled. Qin Feng frowned and turned around to look at the dark and deep mine tunnel behind him. After a moment, he slowly opened his mouth. "There seems to be a high-level goods behind us. I'm afraid we can't leave." Roar! Roar! A gloomy, low roar faintly came from the dark tunnel in response to Qin Feng's answer. Qin Feng glanced at the restless people and said with a wave of his hand, "You guys go first. You're not its opponent." As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Feng abruptly raised his head. His pitch-black eyes narrowed as a pressure of death suddenly appeared in his heart. His heart was filled with shock and anger as he gathered all the strength in his body and punched towards a certain direction in the darkness. He threw a punch, and a violent force surged. In an instant, the clothes on his arm burst into pieces. The violent force bombarded the void, and a violent sound of explosion rang out. Boom! Qin Feng was hit by a black shadow like a cannonball. The violent force bombarded the stone wall. The ceiling of the cave was shaking as if it was going to collapse at any time. "Young master," Qin Shou's expression changed drastically. He turned around and stared at the monster that walked out of the darkness. This was a terrifying monster. Its entire body was covered in dark golden scales. It crawled on all fours on the ground and lay on the ceiling of the cave. Its long tail swayed like a whip. The most peculiar thing about this monster was that it actually had a human head. However, it had a mouth full of pitch-black steel teeth. Its dim yellow pupils were filled with indifference, cruelty, tyranny, and greed in the darkness. It was this terrible monster that attacked Qin Feng right under their noses. The most terrible thing was that they didn't even have time to react. They saw Qin Feng, the strongest among them, being sent flying. With a light leap, the monster's speed was as fast as lightning. In the darkness, their expressions changed as they saw the monster appear not far away. It tilted its head, and the strange, spiderweb-like patterns on its terrifying face cracked open. Drops of transparent, white saliva dripped down. It was exceptionally terrifying. Keek. Such thirsty food, such tender flesh, so full of spirituality. None of you can leave today. This evil, ferocious monster tilted its ugly head. Its voice was hoarse, low, and very unpleasant to the ear. Cough, cough. Qin Feng forced himself out of the rock. He pressed down hard on one of his arms. The sound of bones rubbing against each other rang out. The intense pain caused his muscles to twitch, but his expression didn't change. Qin Feng glanced at his injuries. A trace of coldness flashed through his eyes. Although he had blocked the attack in front of him by instinct, the monster's strength was too tyrannical. Even though Qin Feng's physique was stronger than an ordinary warrior in the fourth heaven of martial arts, he still suffered a serious injury. Even his ribs were broken by this attack. What made him frown the most was that the opponent's sharp claws contained a kind of paralyzing toxin. The place where he was hit faintly transmitted a kind of numbness. When he moved, he felt that most of his strength could not be used. Fortunately, the Xuanwu divine pill in his body once again played a key role. A bit of medicinal power spread through his body. A gentle force flowed through his meridians, and a numbing feeling instantly disappeared. This monster was unexpectedly strong. "Young master, are you all right?" Seeing Qin Feng stand up, Qin Shou and the others were overjoyed. They quickly ran over to help Qin Feng up. The sudden appearance of this monster gave them too much pressure. The pressure of death made it hard for them to breathe. Qin Feng standing up was like a pillar of support for them. "What kind of monster is this?" Beside Qin Shou, Yu Yao held a long sword. Her beautiful face was pale. Qin Feng raised his head and looked at this beautiful and alluring young girl. At this moment, the young girl was nervously holding onto her sword and was on guard. The sharp Qin Feng noticed that the young girl's hand that was holding onto the sword was sweating. This usually arrogant young girl was finally afraid. Qin Feng's eyes carried a faint smile. However, His face was cold without a trace of warmth. His voice was flat as he said, "This monster is also a low-level demon of the Earth Abyss. However, compared to cannon fodder like the dog demons, it can be considered a high-level one. This kind of monster has a resounding name. It is called the Hunter. They move like the wind. They are especially good at hunting in the dark. They have no body temperature or smell, so it is especially difficult to track them in the dark. They also have the sharp claws and teeth of top predators. The most frightening thing about them is that their claws and teeth are usually laced with a kind of paralyzing poison. If you're not careful, you will be paralyzed." Qin Feng sneered. Under normal circumstances, their combat strength is comparable to a master of the sixth heavenly layer. If they are elite hunters, they can definitely hunt down a seventh heavenly layer martial artist. They were so scared by Qin Feng's words that their faces turned pale. The strongest among them was only at the late fourth heavenly layer. A hunter that could hunt down a sixth heavenly layer martial artist was like a god of death in their eyes. "Then what do we do now? This hunter is so powerful. We can't fight at all. Do we just wait for death?" Yu Yao's pink face was pale. She bit her pink lips. Her foxy big eyes were full of despair and unwillingness. Qin Feng smiled coldly. Yu Yao's eyes changed color, and he shook his head and said, "Correction, you can't fight it, but it doesn't mean I can't fight it." Yu Yao's eyes were clearly written with disbelief. This hunter was comparable to a martial artist at the peak of the sixth heavenly layer. Qin Feng was just a fourth heavenly layer martial artist. The gap was too big. You're going to die, and you still want to be brave. Yu Yao thought so. Although she did not refute, the disdain in her eyes was undisguised. A trace of cold force broke through the air, fast as lightning. A claw attack came. An extremely cold breath was like 1,000 years of ice piercing the air. In an instant, it was in front of Qin Feng. It was completely focused on Qin Feng. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with coldness. His reaction speed was extremely fast. With a flip of his palm, his arm trembled as the green-golden ancient sword in his hand trembled, transforming into 3 sword shadows that slashed towards the incoming claw. The faint shadow of the sword flashed, and the sharp cold light was so faint that it could not be detected. A trace of fear flashed through the hunter's yellow, vertical pupils. He leaped up and nimbly retreated. He stood in the middle of the path and looked at the ancient sword in Qin Feng's hand from afar. Taking advantage of the hunter's occasional attention on him, Qin Feng's peripheral vision swept across the nervous few people. He pointed his long sword at the hunter and shouted sternly, "You guys go first." Qin Shou and the others heard him and immediately ran to the side. Although Qin Shou and Qin Gang were worried, they knew that their battle power was limited. They couldn't help Qin Feng even if they stayed here. They might as well leave. Seeing them leave decisively, Qin Feng nodded slightly. These people were his team that he had painstakingly gathered. He couldn't let them die in the hands of the hunters. "Little bugs, no one can escape today." An evil and cold voice sounded out. How could the hunter allow its prey to escape when it was right in front of its mouth? It already saw these people as its prey. A black shadow sped forward, blocking in front of Qin Shou and the others. Its skinny and small body was as agile as lightning, and its sharp claws were like steel claws, abnormally sharp and fierce. A cold, killing intent enveloped Qin Shou, who was the leader. Seeing that Qin Shou was about to die in the hands of the hunters, Qin Feng's eyes turned cold. He took a step forward, and like a light shadow and a cool breeze, his grand completion clear wind steps exploded. His body moved at an extremely fast speed, and with a thrust of his sword, the faint sword shadow blocked the sharp claws of the hunters. Ding, ding, dang, dang. The ancient sword and the sharp claws collided and made a sound of metal clashing. Qin Feng's swordsmanship wasn't very good, but its killing power was very high. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. The hunter's attention was completely focused on the few people who were running away. In addition, underestimated the speed of Qin Feng's sword, so it couldn't dodge in time. One of its claws was actually cut off by the sharp ancient sword. It let out a shrill scream. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Qin Shou and the others ran past the hunter. Their figures flashed and soon disappeared into the darkness. The hunter could only watch them run away. For a moment, its ferocious face was abnormally terrifying. Its dim yellow beast eyes stared at Qin Feng. The viciousness and savagery in its eyes were so dense that it almost materialized. Qin Feng felt a chill in his heart. An aura of death rushed towards him. Chapter 48. Qin Feng blocked the hunter with his sword. Seeing that Qin Shou and the rest were already far away, he did not want to be entangled with the hunter. He lightly jumped and chased after them like a meteor chasing after the moon. However, after jumping a few dozen feet, Qin Feng's face suddenly changed. He felt a bone-chilling cold chi coming from behind him. It was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it was already behind him. Qin Feng's face slightly changed. His eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. He was not slow at all. He used the Spirit Snake body art. His Spirit Snake Demon Fist art was close to the small success stage. His body twisted like a flying spirit snake. His body twisted unbelievably, and a black shadow almost brushed past him. The black shadow flashed and landed in the middle of the mine, blocking the way. Little bug, don't even think about escaping. The hunter's furious voice sounded. The killing intent in the darkness was like a tidal wave. The escape of Qin Shou and the rest had completely enraged it. Huh! Qin Feng raised an arm and looked at the place where the sharp claws had brushed past. Even though he was fast enough, his skin was still scratched by the wind generated by the claws. When he moved his arm, a burning pain came from the wound. The hunter's movement speed was too fast. It was way faster than him. Hearing this, Qin Feng's eyes flashed with coldness. The corner of his mouth curved up into a cold arc. No one can block my path, no matter if he is a human or an animal. You're courting death. The hunter was furious. Its dim yellow beast eyes were filled with brutality. It was like a spirit monkey jumping at high speed. It did not move in a straight line, but changed its direction from time to time. While it was moving, Qin Feng could barely catch its shadow. Swoosh! The black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. A cold chill attacked Qin Feng's abdomen. Qin Feng's forehead was covered in cold sweat. It was too late to dodge. Qin Feng gritted his teeth and tried to use the spirit snake body art to avoid the attack. Swoosh! The poisonous claws directly brushed past Qin Feng's waist. Blood splattered. Qin Feng felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. It was so painful that his muscles were trembling. The hunter's claw had directly torn off a piece of flesh from his waist. The terrible wound was badly mangled. Qin Feng endured the excruciating pain and retreated dozens of feet like a gust of wind. Qin Feng stared fixedly at the hunter. The coldness in his eyes was like the light of a sharp sword. He glanced at the bloody part of his waist. If Qin Feng hadn't dodged the attack at the most critical moment, his heart and lungs would have been ripped out by this attack. TSK, 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 what a cunning little thing. What a fast speed. You actually have the ability to capture a trace of my full movement. The hunter's surprised voice came from the darkness. Qin Feng's back was already soaked in sweat, and blood flowed down his waist. He held the ancient sword in one hand, and his face was expressionless. The tearing pain caused all the pores on his body to tremble violently. Between life and death, at this moment, his five senses were highly concentrated. There was no pain in his eyes, no fear, no hesitation, only life and death. The innate mixed elements unity chi was operated to the extreme. Traces of internal breath were operating at a terrifying speed that had never been seen before. The Xuanwu divine elixir in the depths of his heart was beating, releasing a majestic medicinal power. The hunter tilted its head and stared at Qin Feng. It was a little hesitant. The aura of the prey in front of it was obviously far inferior to its own, but it didn't know why it suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis, as if it could threaten its life. It was very puzzled. It had hunted a lot of existences with this level of aura, and every time it was extremely easy. The aura of the human in front of it was obviously similar to those people, but why did it feel a sense of crisis that could threaten its life? It walked on all fours on the ground, and its terrible yellow vertical pupils were full of irritation and uneasiness. However, the hunter's cold instinct soon covered up this trace of vigilance. Its body flashed, and the dark shadow was like a ghost. It moved at high speed again, trying to confuse Qin Feng's senses and take the opportunity to kill him in one blow. Qin Feng's dark eyes moved quickly, and his eyes followed the phantom flying around the top of the cave. He stared at the high-speed moving figure without blinking. The hunter's speed was so fast that it reached the limit of what he could capture with his naked eyes. Any warrior at the fourth heavenly layer of martial arts would feel despair at this speed. Qin Feng was under more and more pressure. Although he was born with a strong spiritual sense and had been nourished by the Xuanwu divine elixir, his five senses were stronger than ordinary warriors at the fourth heavenly layer of martial arts. However, he still couldn't keep up with the hunter's movement. Slowly, Qin Feng's forehead began to sweat. Qin Feng knew that if this continued, he would completely lose control of the hunter's whereabouts. At that time, it would be his death. No, I can't go on like this. The fourth heavenly layer of martial arts has comprehended the internal breath. The potential in the body is slowly released, and the five senses are strengthened. However, I have just comprehended the magical use of the internal breath. Although my five senses are strengthened, it is still too difficult to catch the hunter's movement speed. I have to think of another way. With cold sweat on his forehead, Qin Feng's mind was spinning. Just at this moment, the hunter seemed to have caught a glimpse of an opportunity and abruptly rushed towards Qin Feng from a tricky angle. Its dark and thin figure shuttled through the darkness as fast as lightning. The most terrible thing was that it didn't cause the slightest sound when it moved. In addition, it had no body temperature or smell, which made it the most terrible assassination condition in the dark. The cold claws seemed to pierce the void, and the distance of several feet was covered in the blink of an eye. The cold light penetrated the darkness, and Qin Feng had a horrible feeling that his body was going to be pierced through. Qin Feng couldn't hide. The moment the hunter attacked, Qin Feng knew that he couldn't escape. The hunter's movement speed and reaction speed were better than his. No matter which direction he dodged to, he would be torn apart by the hunter's claws and turned into several pieces of corpse. In fact, Qin Feng didn't hide. When that pair of sharp claws flashing with terrifying cold light was about to reach his chest, there was no panic in Qin Feng's eyes. His chest puffed up, and he took a deep breath. In the darkness, the brilliance in his eyes was as bright as the stars. The arm holding the ancient sword suddenly moved. He directly hit the claws like the wind and thunder. His arm was like a longbow, and the ancient sword was like an arrow, explosively chopping down. The ancient sword chopped out, and the blazing sword light with a faint shadow cut through the darkness. The cold light was like a flash of lightning, cutting through the darkness and rushing toward the shadow like a ghost. Poochie! In an instant, the hunter's claws pierced into Qin Feng's flesh. The hunter even grasped Qin Feng's beating heart. As long as it exerted a little force, Qin Feng would die completely. Qin Feng's chest was in severe pain. The pain of his chest being pierced made his face twist. However, his cold eyes gradually carried a trace of smile. His smile was incomparably crazy, bloody, and tragic. Even though he knew that as long as the hunter moved slightly, his heart would be easily crushed like tofu in the palm of the hunter's hand. The hunter was so close to him, so close that Qin Feng could even clearly see the strange patterns on the hunter's scale-covered head, as well as the strange fishy smell coming from its steel-like mouth. That smell was so strong. The hunter's yellow vertical beast eyes were so fierce and terrifying, but this face was forever stiff. There was a faint sword mark between its eyebrows. Just a moment ago, Qin Feng's ancient sword had completely split open its head. It no longer had the chance to crush Qin Feng's heart. Qin Feng grinned with an indescribable bitterness. In the end, he still won this battle. He was gambling with the last sword. He knew that he couldn't avoid this attack, so he used his life to make a big bet. He bet that before the hunter could crush his heart, he would kill the other party with his sword. In fact, he did win the bet. However, the price was not cheap. Qin Feng's chest was pierced, and the broken ribs were directly pierced into his lungs. If it weren't for the Xuanwu divine pill's medicinal efficacy, Qin Feng would be a dead man now. Chapter 49. Qin Feng held the hunter's claw with one hand and slowly pulled it out of his chest. This process was very bloody and tragic. The pain of the claw being pulled out inch by inch made his eyes turn red. The 48,000 pores on his body contracted violently under this intense pain. As the poisonous claw was pulled out, the medicinal efficacy of the black tortoise divine pill was slowly released. The rolling medicinal efficacy overflowed from his dantian, and the injury was suppressed. Gasping for breath, Qin Feng strenuously propped himself up with the ancient sword. Just such a simple action caused his forehead to sweat. He glanced at his injuries. His chest was almost torn open by the poisonous claws, and several of his ribs were broken. Such a serious injury. Even with the miraculous effect of the black tortoise divine pellet, it would not be so easy to heal. After a while, Qin Feng's physical strength recovered a little. He barely supported his injury. After slightly regaining his ability to move, he gritted his teeth and used the ancient sword as a crutch. Dragging his seriously injured body, he rushed out of the crystal jade mine. Qin Feng had a very urgent sense of crisis. This feeling forced him to get out of the ground as soon as possible. He always felt that there was something more terrible behind him. Therefore, even if he was seriously injured at this time, he had to quickly escape from the underground crystal jade mine. Qin Feng's intuition was not wrong. Just a quarter of an hour after he left, a few deep, beastly roars appeared near the corridor where he and the hunter were fighting. The smell of blood in the corridor had not yet dissipated. A few very strange and hideous black shadows appeared in the corridor. The strange aura of each of them was not below that of the dead hunter. There was even a monster with a human face and a scorpion body whose aura was far stronger than the hunter's. Its tyrannical aura was close to the 8th heavenly layer of the martial path. The monsters wandered in the corridor for a moment. Soon, their cruel and tyrannical eyes fell on the corridor where Qin Feng had left. A few black shadows flashed and quickly chased after the remaining aura of the scene. The monsters were moving as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, they had covered a distance of several hundred zhang. Suddenly, however, they stopped moving. All sorts of strange creatures were restlessly pacing back and forth in front of the crossroads. They roared angrily at each of the crossroads, not knowing which way to go. Traces of Qin Feng's aura could be found in many of the tunnels. Qin Feng had anticipated this situation and was prepared for it. Along the way, there were pieces of cloth and clothes scattered around the entrances. At this moment, the elites of the Qin, Song, Ning, and Yu clans in Upper River Town had also arrived at the outskirts of the Crystal Jade Mine. The elites that suddenly appeared from the tunnel just happened to bump into the savage beasts in the midst of their rampage. When Qin Feng came out of the exit of the Qiang mountain range, his face gradually regained its color. His injuries had mostly healed. At least, the terrible wound on his chest had been completely healed. The black tortoise divine pellet truly lived up to its name. It was only a very small portion of the medicinal power of 10 cubic meters, but it was enough to make Qin Feng, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death, jump up and down again. "Young master, you're back." At the exit, Qin Shou and Qin Gang were waiting anxiously. When they saw Qin Feng walking out from the Dao sect, they were overjoyed. Beside them, Yu Yao was staring at Qin Feng in shock, as if she had just swallowed a fly. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. Qin Feng actually came back unscathed from the hands of that terrifying hunter. 3 days later, Qin Feng's injuries were completely healed. In the courtyard on Mount Qiang, Qin Feng's chest heaved up and down as he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. When he opened his eyes, a faint light flashed across them. The moment he opened his eyes, Qin Feng's aura fluctuated for a brief moment, but it was quickly calmed down. This time around, although Qin Feng almost died in the hands of the hunters, it wasn't like he didn't gain anything. After experiencing a life and death battle, his primordial chaos unity qi became even purer. His inner qi circulated in his meridians like a trickle. His 3 strands of internal qi increased to 6 strands. My 5 senses have become stronger. Sure enough, there are great terrors in life and death, but there are also great opportunities. Under such a terrifying situation, my potential was released to the greatest extent. My 5 senses have been strengthened by a lot, and I've already begun to touch the realm of spiritual perception. As Qin Feng spoke, his eyes revealed a hint of joy. Qin Feng stood up and moved his fists and legs. His bones whimpered as they rubbed against each other, emitting crackling sounds. A tyrannical aura exuded from his body. As he moved his fists, a huge force faintly caused a series of qi explosions, sweeping away the weakness he felt when he came back, and faintly increasing his strength. You've already touched the realm of spiritual perception. Wen Yu Yao, who was practicing her swordsmanship, heard Qin Feng's muttering. The long sword in her hand trembled. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked at the energetic Qin Feng in astonishment. Qin Feng glanced at the beautiful girl who had a jealous expression and said with a smile, "Yes, I've already begun to touch the realm of spiritual perception. The 5 senses are divided into vision, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. Martial artists use these 5 senses to comprehend all things in the world. However, the 5 senses have their limits. If you want to comprehend that mysterious realm, you have to comprehend and condense your 5 senses into spiritual perception. Only then can you gradually touch that mysterious door. Spiritual perception. That's the unique sense of a martial artist at the 7th heavenly layer." Yu Yao was so jealous that she was about to go crazy. She only felt that Qin Feng's luck was simply too good. He had already touched the spiritual perception at the 4th heavenly layer. It was simply infuriating. Spiritual perception was also known as innate spiritual perception. It was a mysterious feeling. Even if a martial artist at the 7th heavenly layer closed his eyes, he could still feel the changes within 3 feet around him. It was this sense that he relied on. If an ordinary martial artist wanted to comprehend spiritual perception, they had to cultivate step by step. They had to temper their neishi, develop their potential through neishi, and strengthen their 5 senses. Only when they reached the 6th heavenly layer could they begin to comprehend spiritual perception. They could then use spiritual perception to condense the concept of heaven and earth and form a bridge between heaven and earth. The 7th heavenly layer of the martial path was known as the true qi realm, also known as the innate realm. At that time, the body no longer contained neishi, but high-grade Xiantian true qi with a portion of a tribute power. Neishi and true qi were equivalent to flowing water and solid ice. It was a qualitative transformation. Yu Yao was greatly disappointed. She was also a genius. She was a proud son of heaven in the Yu clan and was the moon surrounded by the stars. However, in front of this Qin Feng who was called trash, not only was she overtaken by the latecomer, she was also repeatedly defeated. Yu Yao's beautiful face was gloomy. She was extremely depressed. Her face was ashen for the entire day. Although the underground treasure hunt ended without any results, Qin Feng was not without gains. At least he had found the fatal weakness of the Qin family, a weakness that was enough to cause the collapse of the Qin family in Upper River Town. One day later, Qin Feng sent Qin Shou to pick up the little maid, Hong Lian, who was living in seclusion on a small mountain in the outskirts of the barbaric mountain range. Qin Feng decided to leave Upper River Town. There were powerful alien races like the Hunters in the underground of Upper River Town. This place would soon become a whirlpool of storms. If he continued to stay here, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble for Qin Feng. Although Qin Feng did not care about trouble, he did not want to be involved in this kind of dangerous trouble for no reason. especially when it was related to the ferocious alien races like the terrifying demons in the Earth Abyss. Of course, the most important thing was that a few days ago, Yao, who had gone out, had brought back a piece of news. The only and most famous school in the Yin Kingdom, All Stars College, had begun to publicly recruit students. The strong recruits would soon arrive at Shauna City for an on-site test to select the best talents. Upper River Town's layout was too small. Here, he was like a dragon trapped in shallow water. It was impossible for Qin Feng to break through to the Meridian's condensation stage in a short period of time. This was far from his original intention. Outside of Upper River Town, the vast world was his stage. If he wanted to better integrate into this stage, the best choice was undoubtedly to join a large faction. Sects and academies were the best choices. However, if he joined a sect, he would be bound by the sect's rules. In the future, he would also have to follow the sect's rules. For Qin Feng, who was naturally undisciplined, this was unbearable. Academies were different. After graduation, there were no mandatory requirements. However, before he left, Qin Feng still had one last thing to do. He still remembered the oath he had made when Qin Feng was seriously injured and on the verge of death. He would destroy the Upper River Town's Qin family, avenge his life, and completely destroy this rotten family. Therefore, before he left, in order to repay the Qin family and the special treatment given to him by the Patriarch for so many years, Qin Feng decided to prepare a big gift for the Qin family. Chapter 50. Several days later, a major event occurred in High River Town. Someone had dug out several monsters from beneath High River Town. These monsters had dog heads and human bodies with sharp claws. As soon as they came out, they killed everyone they saw, killing many innocent townspeople. If it weren't for several powerful martial artists passing by and killing these monsters in time, many people would have died in the town. According to these powerful martial artists who passed by, these monsters were the legendary Earth Abyss demons. It was possible that there was a crack in the Earth Abyss beneath High River Town, and these Earth Abyss demons had escaped from underground. Earth Abyss demons were legendary monsters that were even crueler than vicious beasts. At first, there were some people who were skeptical, but as a second wave of dog-headed Earth Abyss demons rushed out from underground, they began to recklessly slaughter everyone. The townspeople of High River Town began to panic. A wave of people began to flee from High River Town. In just a few days, as more and more dog-headed Earth Abyss demons rushed out, this wave of people began to expand. Finally, it formed a massive flood that spread out in all directions to other towns. 9 out of 10 houses in High River Town were empty. The Qin family was a wealthy family in this land. They had been rooted in Upper River Town for hundreds of years. They built roads and built docks. As Upper River Town prospered, the Qin family grew stronger and stronger. They gathered refugees and expanded their territory. However, as the fertile land of Upper River Town suddenly collapsed, the wealthy family that had been rooted in this place began to collapse like a dilapidated house whose foundation had been dug out. In particular, after losing most of their elites and suffering a great blow to their vitality, this awe-inspiring and illustrious family suddenly collapsed like scattered sand. Without High River Town, the Qin family was nothing. In the Qin clan mansion, the Qin clan patriarch, Qin Qingshan, stared blankly at the empty and silent Upper River Town. From the top of the Qin clan mansion, one could see the entire Upper River Town. In the past, Qin Qingshan loved this place the most. This astute and dignified old man stood in the loft. His pupils seemed to have lost focus as he stared blankly at the once bustling town that was now empty. The large town was a mess. The spacious streets were as silent as ghosts. In the past, the waterways and wharves were filled with merchants. Now, large ships were anchored here, but there was no hustle and bustle, only a deathly stillness. How could this be? Qin Qingshan stared at all of this. Fourth brother, tell me, what did I do wrong for my Qin clan to end up like this? All these years, I've been racking my brains for the Qin family. There's not a moment when I haven't been running around and planning for the Qin family. There's not a moment when I haven't been paving the way for the Qin family's future. How could you fall into such a state in my hands? He roared excitedly. His eyes were blood red, and he gave off a berserk aura. A wave of energy blasted out from his waist, causing the air to explode. A black-robed old man was standing behind him. When the Qi attack came, there was an invisible force field around his body that blocked the Qi attack. His eyes were calm and carried a trace of sadness. Big brother, Upper River Town's Qin family has declined. It's not because you didn't work hard enough. Qin Xingshan suddenly turned around and stared at the black-clothed, black-haired old man. The black-clothed old man smiled coldly. His eyes were as cold as ice. It's just that you've misjudged him. Obviously, Qin Fong isn't the Qin family's master of resurgence in the prophecy. The reason why the Qin family has fallen into such a state is all because of your good grandson, Qin Fong. If he wasn't jealous of the talented, ambitious, and arrogant, he wouldn't have buried so many elites of the Qin family. Almost one-third of the elites were buried in the barbaric mountain range by him. The black-clothed old man's words were like a sword that pierced into Qin Qingshan's heart. With every word he said, Qin Qingshan became silent. In the end, his face was ashen. However, there was still a trace of hope in his eyes. He forced a smile. Fourth brother, it won't happen. As the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. With this lesson, Fong will definitely rise again. That Almighty said that our Qin family is destined to have a master of resurgence in this generation who will lead the Qin family to glory. Fong is destined to lead the Qin family to rise again. The black-clothed old man smiled coldly and interrupted. Big brother, the Qin family indeed has a master of resurgence in this generation. However, I'm afraid it's not Qin Fong who you have high hopes for. Qin Qingshan's body shook. He looked at the black-clothed old man with an ashen face and said furiously, Fourth brother, that's enough. Fong has only failed once. How can you be so harsh? He's still young and inexperienced. As long as he learns from his lesson, he will be able to make a comeback. As long as he's here, our Qin family will have hope. Even if we fail, we still have a chance to rise again. Moreover, Qin Fong is the most outstanding disciple in this generation of the Qin family. In terms of aptitude, means, and opportunities, no one can compare with him. Speaking of this, Qin Qingshan's face revealed a trace of pride. There was even more excitement in his eyes. Cultivating an elite like Qin Fong was the proudest thing in his life. The black-clothed old man looked speechlessly at Qin Qingshan, who seemed to be on steroids. After a while, he sneered. Rise again? Big brother, are you crazy? The Qin family's assets have all been squandered by your grandson. What can we use to rise again? We can't even protect Shanghai Town. The Qin family of Shanghai City has already decided to send another branch to take over Shanghai Town. The Qin family of Shanghai Town has completely become a thing of the past. Under Qin Qingshan's ashen face, the black-clothed old man smiled faintly. However, there's one thing you're right about. The Qin family does have a glimmer of hope. Qin Qingshan stared at the black-clothed old man and had an extremely bad premonition. Ignoring Qin Qingshan's murderous gaze, the black-clothed old man smiled with a trace of hope. Although the facts have proven that Qin Fong is just an embroidered pillow, fortunately, this embroidered pillow has finally tested a true dragon for our Qin family. Qin Fong, Qin Fong, Qin Qingshan's eyes instantly turned red like blood. Fourth brother, how dare you mention that rebellious bastard in front of me? The black-clothed old man sneered. Big brother, Qin Fong is not a bastard. He is the blood of our Qin family and also the master of our Qin family's resurgence. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to that good grandson of yours. If it weren't for that stupid grandson of yours, we might not have been able to test this true dragon. Qin Qingshan was furious. Bastard. How can that bastard Qin Fong be the master of our Qin family's resurgence? He is just a bastard from a collateral branch. What qualifications does he have to be the master of our Qin family's resurgence? The black-clothed old man sneered and said with resentment, "Trash. Regardless of cultivation, talent, means, or opportunities, this trash is better than your good grandson in every aspect. If he is not the master of our resurgence, then is he your good grandson Qin Fong, who can't do anything right but can spoil things? Even if he is not the master of our resurgence, at least he is much better than your prodigal son who ruined our Qin family." Qin Qingshan's chest rose and fell violently. A surge of anger almost made him explode. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he couldn't refute because it was the truth. Because Qin Fong, whom he had high hopes for, didn't even have the courage to fight back when he saw Qin Fong. He was so scared that he turned around and ran away. Because of Qin Fong, the Qin family had indeed lost more than half of its vitality. Qin Qingshan's face was swept to the ground, and he was ashamed. "Big brother, these things will be recorded in the family history by the family historian. I'm afraid that you are blind, domineering, and have great ambition but little talent. I'm afraid that your impression will be shown in the eyes of the future generations. You will become the center of this branch of the Qin family in Upper Rivertown. You will be the main culprit that led to the decline of the family. You will be the object of disdain by the future generations. You'd better take care of yourself," the black-clothed old man said coldly. Then he flicked his sleeves and left directly. On the spot, Qin Qingshan's face turned white and black, black and red, and finally turned into the color of pig liver. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out from Qin Qingshan's chest. His face turned as pale as paper, and he fell to the ground. Chapter 51. After the matters in Shanghai town were settled, Qin Feng led the few of them on their journey to Shanghai City after Qin Shou had made arrangements for their family. According to the information Yu Yao received from the Yu clan, the experts of All Stars College would arrive at Mountain River City in a few days to conduct the recruitment test. All Stars College was the only college in the Yin country. It was famous far and wide for its strength and abundant resources. It was also known as the cradle of experts in this region. Every time All Stars College recruited students, it would attract many geniuses from around Mountain River City to participate in the test. In fact, All Stars College's headquarters couldn't be said to be in the territory of the Yin country. It was located in the area between the Yin country, the Jin country, and the Heishui country. The terrain here was vast and dangerous. There were many towering mountains and steep ridges where strange beasts and demons roamed freely. It was also adjacent to the 100,000 Grand Canyon, and behind it was a primitive mountain range spanning hundreds of millions of kilometers. It was an extremely mysterious place. After All Stars College landed here, they built 36 strategic towns here. They are called the 36 Star Cities and have always been overseen by the experts of All Stars College. It is said that the 36 strategic towns are exceptionally prosperous, and each of them is not inferior to our Mountain River City. In the center of the 36 Star Cities, there is a majestic city called the Capital of Stars. That is where the headquarters of All Stars College is located. It is said that the Capital of Stars is an inconceivable giant city built on a star. I don't know if the rumors are true or not, but with the rise of All Stars College, that place has become the capital of stars. Along the way, Yao told Qin Feng everything she knew about All Stars College. After saying that, she added another sentence. All Stars College is most famous for the astrological martial Tao. Astrological martial Tao? In the carriage, Qin Feng's eyes flickered. Yu Yao nodded, and a trace of yearning and hope appeared on her face. The reason why All Stars College is called All Stars is because they can use the power of the stars to cultivate. It is said that the celestial martial Tao can control the power of the stars in the universe and draw upon the power of the ancient stars in the boundless galaxy above the 9 heavens to refine one's body. At the end of the cultivation, one can even condense a star mark and cultivate a terrifying star divine ability. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes as he listened to Yu Yao's exclamation. Actually, He was no stranger to All Stars College. In fact, his impression of it was much deeper than Yu Yao's. In his mind, All Stars College wasn't considered outstanding among the many factions in the Spirit Sea continent. If he had to make a ranking, it could only be considered an ordinary first-rate faction. There were many powerful factions that were ranked higher than it, and there were even super first-rate factions. If it wasn't for that terrifying Xian formation and the incident that happened later on, perhaps no one would remember the name All Stars College in the future. If it wasn't for that secret, Qin Feng would have definitely chosen to join a higher-ranked academy, and not All Stars College. A trace of absent-mindedness flashed through Qin Feng's eyes. Perhaps no one would have thought that in the future, a faction that didn't seem to be in the top 100 of the first-rate factions in the Spirit Sea continent would give birth to 14 demon gods at once. In a short period of time, it became another super faction in the Spirit Sea continent. When Qin Feng thought of the secret that All Stars College was trying its best to hide, he couldn't help but tremble. 14 demon gods. How terrifying was that? Every demon god was formed from the great fortune of heaven and earth. A single demon god represented an era. How shocking was 14 demon gods? In the future, Qin Feng gathered all the fortune of the Age of Chaos, but he still failed to become a god. However, All Stars College gave birth to 14 demon gods at once. A trace of passion flashed through Qin Feng's eyes. Right now, he was probably the only one who knew about the secret that All Stars College was planning. After a moment, the passion in Qin Feng's eyes dimmed. Actually, he only knew about that secret from a few words in the records of the future. He didn't know the specific details. He only knew a bit about the general process. Moreover, with his current strength, even if he knew the secret, he would be powerless. This is an opportunity. Although I only heard about it briefly, it is rumored that the 14 demon gods aren't old monsters that have cultivated for thousands of years. Instead, they are chosen from the geniuses of All Stars College. This means that as long as one enters All Stars College, they will have a chance. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. He was secretly tempted. However, it is not easy to enter All Stars College. Every time All Stars College recruits, it is a gathering of elites and experts. Many thoughts flashed through Qin Feng's mind. The carriage was silent, but Yao didn't mind. She thought that Qin Feng was also attracted by the prospects of All Stars College. Yu Yao's eyes were unhurried. Wasn't she the same? Although she was the eldest daughter of the Yu clan, looked noble, and was known as a genius, she was also very nervous about whether or not she would be accepted by All Stars College. All Stars College recruited students once every 3 years, which time wasn't fierce. If she could be accepted by All Stars College, it would be a great fortune. Mountain River City's Yu clan had similar incentives. No matter who the clan's disciples were, as long as they were accepted by All Stars College, they would receive the greatest amount of resources from the Yu clan. Being able to enter All Stars College not only proved one's talent, aptitude, and strength, it was also a symbol of glory. However, when it came to All Stars College, which one in 10,000 wasn't chosen? Half a month later, the few of them finally arrived at the foot of the Mountain River City. The journey was quite peaceful. Other than dealing with a few waves of blind thieves, the journey was quite smooth. Along the way, the little maid, Red Lotus, had the deepest understanding. This was the first time she had seen how terrifying the outside world was. The mountains and rivers were filled with dangers. If it wasn't for Qin Feng and a few other martial arts experts protecting them, ordinary people like them would have lost their lives. Not to mention the wind, frost, fatigue, and illness along the way, just the bandits that were as numerous as cow's hair, as well as the fierce beasts that occasionally leapt out from the mountains, would have killed ordinary people like them. For the first time, the little maid, Red Lotus, had the desire to become stronger. Qin Feng jumped up from the carriage and looked at the majestic city in front of him. On the majestic city walls, there were 2 ancient characters engraved on them: Mountain River. The giant city in front of him was like a giant tiger lying in the middle of the mountains and rivers. It was majestic, majestic, and had an ancient foundation that made one's heart tremble. This was no longer a simple city. Instead, it was a colossal miracle that lay on the ground and breathed in the wind, clouds, and lightning. Qin Shou, Qin Gang, and the little maid had spent their entire lives in Upper River Town, so they had never seen such a giant city before. For a moment, they exclaimed in surprise. The guards on the side smiled as if they were used to it. Most people who came to Mountain River City for the first time would have such a sigh. Qin Feng jumped down from the carriage and let Qin Shou and Qin Gang lead the horse into the city. The guards at the city gate didn't make things difficult for their carriage. They only checked it a little and easily let them in. It wasn't that the guards were negligent in their duties, but that the experts from All Stars College had arrived a few days ago, making this place even livelier. Mountain River City was the main city. The surrounding land of the Wild Mountain Range was fertile with beautiful mountains and rivers. The surrounding area was filled with strategic towns. Especially at this time, there was an endless stream of carriages entering the city. Any one of them could be a young master, or young miss of some family. Every 3 years, youths from all over the world would gather in Mountain River City to try their luck. These guards were all very crafty and wouldn't cause trouble at this time. After Qin Feng and the others found an inn to stay in, they casually asked a few people and easily found the location of All Stars College's enrollment. The location of All Stars College's enrollment was at the plaza in the middle of the city. However, when they arrived at the plaza where All Stars College's enrollment was located, Qin Feng and the others couldn't help but be dumbfounded. This huge plaza that could accommodate thousands of people at the same time was currently filled with a sea of people. It was so crowded that there wasn't even room to stand. There was a huge Xian formation in front of them, and the Xian formation diagram was filled with people. The huge Xian formation emitted a faint light under the clear sky. At this time, a clear and cold voice could be heard clearly from afar. Zheng Xiaoshan, 15 years old, cultivation at the late stage of the third celestial layer of the martial path. Disqualified. Then, Qin Feng and the others saw a dark-skinned middle-aged man with a bear-like figure walk out with a gloomy face and a chubby young master with an ashen face. The surrounding people all showed expressions of pity, sympathy, or schadenfreude. Chapter 52. A 15-year-old late stage of the third firmament of the martial path. Even in the 9 great clans of Mountain River City, this kind of aptitude is considered top-notch, 1 in 100, and is heavily nurtured by the clan. Such an elite was still eliminated. He couldn't even pass the first round of All Stars College. All Stars College's test is too strict. It's a pity that my kid is also at the third firmament of the martial path. My little brat broke through the 4th firmament of the martial path this year, but All Stars College's rules state that the bone age must be below 18 years old. My brat is 19 years old this year. Don't talk about it. Our Zhao clan's genius, Zhao Qing, who is at the peak of the 3rd firmament of the martial path, was also eliminated. Our Yin clan's genius from ancient Extinction Town was also eliminated. Our Long clan's genius from Chongming Town was also. Among the crowd, there were sighs of sorrow. Many people's faces were gloomy as they frowned. Most of them looked at their own clan's geniuses and were angry that they didn't fight for it. Seeing this, the faces of the young heroes turned green. A few of them were already pale, their hands and feet were cold, and they couldn't speak. All Stars College's requirements are actually so high. In the crowd, Qin Feng was slightly surprised. A 15-year-old third firmament of the martial path wasn't low no matter where. Ordinary people usually waited until they were 9 years old before they could train their muscles and bones. Cultivating early was actually pulling up seedlings to help them grow. It would destroy the essence qi balance, affect the body's growth, and harm the body's potential. Therefore, most children started cultivating after the age of 9. Before 9, they would at most train some basic skills, train their fists and legs, cultivate their blood qi, and strengthen their muscles and bones. From 9 to 15 years old, to be able to cultivate to the late stage of the 3rd firmament of the martial path in a short 6 years wasn't something ordinary people could do. There were 9 firmament of the martial path, and the standard cultivation speed was 1 firmament every 3 years. Of course, this didn't include the bottleneck every 3 firmament. If one encountered a bottleneck, it was normal to not be able to break through in their lifetime. To be able to break through to the late stage of the 3rd firmament of the martial path in a short 6 years, this cultivation speed was definitely a genius. No matter where he was, he would be considered an elite. That's nothing. This is just the beginning. To be able to get into All-Stars College, which one of them isn't a 1 in a million genius? They definitely aren't ordinary elites. Yu Yao shook her head. This is just the beginning. Qin Shou and Qin Gang, who were following behind him, were shocked. This was an eye-opener for them. Originally, in their hearts, geniuses like the Qin clan's genius Qin Fong and the Yu clan's genius Yu Yao were already considered heaven-defying geniuses, but here they were nothing. Of course, several people automatically ignored Qin Fong. Qin Fong could no longer be described as a genius. In half a month, he had cultivated to the 4th heavenly layer. He was a monstrous freak. If he said out loud, it would scare people to death. Don't be surprised. A bunch of young masters from small clans who came from God knows where. All-Stars College is actually something that you nouveau riche can covet. Even a bumpkin like you wants to be a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Why don't you take a look at yourself first? An annoying voice rang out. Qin Fong and the others turned around and saw an 11 or 12-year-old arrogant youth dressed in a brocade robe staring at them with disdain. This fellow was dressed in silk and satin, and he was fully dressed like a young master. Beside him was an old man in his 60s wearing a black and green gown. Behind the old man were 2 burly men with swords on their backs. It was obvious that these 2 were the young man's guards. The aura that was faintly revealed from their bodies was actually above the 5th layer of the martial path. Who are you? How can you speak like that? Qin Fong didn't say anything, but the little maid, Hong Lian, who was protective of her own, stood out. The little girl glared at him with her big round eyes, which were filled with annoyance. Uncle Fu, you tell these nouveau riche who this young master is? The brocade-robed youth smiled disdainfully and signaled with his eyes. The old man who looked like a butler smiled bitterly and said, "Young masters, young miss, please forgive us. Our young master is just outspoken. Please don't be offended." Humph. Seeing the old man come out to explain, the little girl snorted. Although she was still a little unhappy, she didn't say anything else. The brocade-robed youth said with dissatisfaction, "Uncle Fu, why do you always boost the morale of others and diminish your own prestige? Why are you so polite to these nouveau riche who came out of nowhere to take advantage of us?" The little girl was about to flare up when Qin Fong pulled her back and shook his head. At this moment, a loud shout came from the testing platform in front of them. Qin Fong and the others looked over and heard a middle-aged man with a cold face suddenly speak. Yao Xiaoguang, initial stage of the 4th heavenly layer of the martial path, 15 years old, qualified, determined to enter the 2nd round of the test. As soon as the voice fell, the crowd exploded. Someone passed the test and entered the 2nd round. Someone entered the 2nd round. Someone shouted loudly as if he had entered the 2nd round of the test himself. This is the genius of the Yao family in Qinghe Town. He actually passed the 1st round of the test. The Yao family is an ancient family with hundreds of years of history. Sure enough, their foundation is not shallow. Someone recognized the identity of the youth who passed the test and whispered, "He is really a young hero, a 15-year-old in the early stage of the 4th sky of the martial path. Young and promising." Someone's face was filled with envy and jealousy. Looking at his son beside him, he couldn't hide his disappointment. The Yao family in Qinghe Town has a genius. Someone praised, his eyes filled with expectation and certainty. Many people were exclaiming softly. The envy and jealousy in their eyes could hardly be concealed. Qin Fong raised his head and looked over. A fair and chubby young man walked down from the testing platform proudly. When he walked down, he walked with his head held high. His eyes narrowed, as if they were looking at the sky, as if he was looking down on all the heroes. There were a few old men accompanying him. They seemed to be the elders of the clan. The old men all had a look of comfort on their faces, as if they had found a successor. They poured tea and asked about his well-being. The old men's wrinkled faces were smiling like old chrysanthemums. Country Bumpkin, you just passed the first round, and you are already so excited. You should know that there are 3 rounds of the test. The first round is the simplest and most basic. You are indeed a nouveau riche from the countryside. You don't have much knowledge. In the distance, the youth in embroidered clothes curled his lips. His eyes were filled with disdain. Coincidentally, he saw Qin Feng's gaze coming over. He immediately looked at Qin Feng provocatively with a sneer. Qin Feng didn't mind. His gaze was pensive. He secretly thought in his heart, from what this guy is saying, this bone age test is only the first round. There are 2 more rounds of tests that are even more demanding. All Stars College's recruitment is indeed famous for its high requirements. This kind of test is actually the simplest. I wonder how many people will be left after the 3 rounds of tests. In front of the Xin formation, there were many people lining up. Qin Feng and Yu Yao were in the middle of the line. From the front, there were at least 100 people. Every one of them was below the age of 18. Qin Feng saw that the youngest among them was only 11 or 12 years old. Most of these people were young talents in the late stage of the 3rd firmament of the martial path. They clearly knew that they might not be able to pass the test, but they still held onto a trace of a fluke, hoping that they would be chosen by an expert. This kind of possibility wasn't impossible. A few years ago, there was a lucky guy who was chosen by an expert who came to recruit students. He directly entered All Stars College. Chapter 53. Zhao Xiaohu, mid-stage 3rd firmament of the martial path, 14 years old, eliminated. Sun Kong, late-stage 3rd firmament of the martial path, 16 years old, eliminated. Sitiyu, early-stage 3rd firmament of the martial path, 15 years old, eliminated. Long Qingqing, early-stage 4th firmament of the martial path, 19 years old, eliminated. On top of the huge Xian formation diagram, a middle-aged man indifferently glanced at the mysterious runes that appeared one after another on the testing platform and announced with an indifferent tone. One by one, the dispirited boys and girls walked down from the testing platform with gloomy faces, gritting their teeth, ashen faces, or expressionless faces. There were hundreds of expressions in the world, but none could compare to one. Every time one of them came down, it would unsurprisingly cause a wave of sighs. The long line of nearly 100 people had already passed by half. Other than the chubby boy at the beginning, no one had passed the test. Next, on the side, a delicate and pretty girl who was in charge of recording said indifferently. At this moment, a thin and weak boy of 11 or 12 years old walked up. He had yet to turn 20, and his hair was in a conical bun. Looking at his clothes, he should be the child of some rich family and not a disciple of a large family. On the side, a beautiful young woman was looking at him with an encouraging gaze. The youth slightly clenched his teeth, and his forehead was sweating from nervousness. Under the indication of the middle-aged man, he nervously placed one of his hands on the testing green jade board. Following that, a sparkling and translucent luster lit up from the profound formation diagram under his feet and rushed into his palm and emitted a multicolored rune. The middle-aged man's indifferent expression changed, and a trace of astonishment flashed across his eyes. The corner of his mouth moved as he announced, Qian Lai, late-stage 4th firmament of the martial path, 12 years old, superior. This time, the middle-aged tester actually used the word superior. There were 5 grades of evaluation: fail, pass, average, superior, and excellent. Superior was already an extremely high evaluation, and in the entire morning, no one had the qualifications to be evaluated as superior. Passed. Hearing the result announced by the middle-aged tester, Qian Lai's face revealed a trace of an excited smile. Late-stage 4th firmament of the martial path, 12 years old. Hiss. Among the crowd, there was the sound of people sucking in cold air. Many people looked at this somewhat introverted boy with respect. This young man's talent was truly extraordinary. There was a high chance that he would pass the test and enter All-Stars College. This seems to be the only son of philanthropist Chien from the south of the city. Philanthropist Chien had done good deeds all his life, but unfortunately, he met with a mishap a few years ago. I thought that the Chien family was about to decline, but I didn't expect his only son to be so amazing. Good people have good karma. The Chien family? Isn't that the richest family in Shauna City? Although the Chien family isn't one of the 9 great families, their businesses are spread across more than half of the Yin country. They are the richest family in the Yin country. Qianlai. Qin Feng's eyes flashed as he listened to the discussions around him. He felt that this name was somewhat familiar, as if he had heard of it in the future. However, he couldn't recall where he had seen this name before. However, what was certain was that this young man was definitely not simple. None of the people who could leave behind a few words in the future were simple. Following that, more than a dozen youths stepped onto the testing platform one after another. However, most of them had poor results and were eliminated one by one. Only 2 of them barely passed the test with their cultivation at the early stage of the 4th heaven of martial arts and were evaluated as qualified. Great waves washing away the sand. Following that, it was a young girl with a calm expression. She wore a pink dress and stood in the crowd like a fairy. She attracted the attention of many youths who were still in the midst of success. This young girl was about 11 or 12 years old, but her facial features were extremely delicate. Her eyes were as pure as water, and her long eyelashes fluttered. She was a strange and lively girl. Her body gave birth to a moving spirituality. This young girl was undoubtedly extremely outstanding. There were many young girls present, and most of them were from famous families. They had inherited the excellent genes of the previous generation. Each of them was extremely outstanding. It could be said that they were a group of orioles and swallows with different temperaments. However, when this young girl appeared, the entire field was overshadowed. "Miss, it's your turn." She was followed by 2 old nannies. These 2 old nannies were tall and sturdy. The aura emitted from their bodies was even more terrifying than that of the ancient Yunling giant tiger that Qin Feng had encountered. They were martial artists who had surpassed the 7th heaven of martial arts. "Who is she?" Qin Feng's eyes slightly moved as he asked. This young girl was already so delicate at the age of 11 or 12. After a while, she would probably become a calamity that could cause the downfall of a country. Zhou Yuxian, the first daughter of the Zhou clan, one of the 9 great clans of Shauna City. Why? Are you tempted? However, her status is noble, and she's not someone that an individual like you can covet. Yu Yao glanced at Qin Feng. There was a strange light in her fox-like eyes. Yu Yao herself was an extremely outstanding beauty. She was 15 or 16 years old, and it was the time for her body to mature. Her figure was tall and had developed well over the years. She had a beautiful face, jet black hair, a graceful and slender waist, and slender legs. She was beautiful and graceful. She already had everything that a mature woman should have. Zhou was indeed beautiful, but after all, she had yet to mature. She was just a green fruit. How could she compare to her who was gradually revealing her charm? However, what made Zhou gloomy was that Qin Feng did not even look her in the eye. At this time, seeing Qin Feng pay attention to Zhou Yuxian, Yu Yao unconsciously revealed a trace of jealousy. Qin Feng muttered to himself, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Qin Feng was not a person who could not walk when he saw a woman. The reason why he paid attention to this young girl was because of the spirituality that she displayed. Qin Feng's body also had an unusual spirituality. However, Qin Feng's spirituality was not innate. It was born after he swallowed the spirituality of the Xuanwu divine pill. The girl's steps were light and graceful. She was wearing a light pink dress and a white muslin dress. The creases of her dress were like snow, and the moonlight flowed on the ground. Her steps were even more graceful than before. One of her slender, jade-like hands landed on the testing stone. Her pink sleeves slipped down, revealing a snow-white wrist. On the Xian formation diagram, a sparkling light flashed and entered the young girl's body. Zhou Yuxian, late stage, 5th heavenly layer, 13 years old, excellent. This time, the middle-aged tester actually used the word excellent for the first time. Looking at the information that appeared on the testing stone, the middle-aged man with a cold expression looked deeply at the pink-clothed young girl. The corner of his eyes revealed a rare trace of a faint smile. He actually opened his mouth and said again, Zhou Yuxian, you are very good. I hope you can continue to work hard. All Stars College welcomes you. The field was silent, and the surrounding gazes were all quiet. Many pairs of eyes were either envious or jealous as they looked at the fairy-like young girl. Many people secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. A 13-year-old late-stage, 5th heavenly layer, this kind of performance was too amazing. Even the experts of the Myriad Star Academy, whose eyes were at the top of their heads, favored her. Previously, even Qian Lai, who received a high-grade evaluation, did not receive such treatment. After Zhou Yuxian, a few young boys and girls walked onto the testing stage. These young girls were mostly from noble backgrounds, and most of them were from the 9 great clans of Mountain River City. There were actually more than 10 youths who passed the first round of testing. Even the man who was in charge of the testing had a trace of a smile on his cold face. However, none of these people were able to receive a high grade or excellent evaluation. Most of them were qualified or average. Soon, it was the turn of the arrogant young man who mocked and ridiculed Qin Feng and the others. He slowly walked onto the testing stage, and his palm landed on the stone slab like lightning. In an instant, a colorful light burst out from the testing Xian formation. Looking at the information on the stone slab, the middle-aged tester looked at the arrogant young man in surprise. After a moment, he revealed a trace of a smile and announced, Guan Xiaoping, late-stage 5th heavenly layer, 12 years old, high grade. The arrogant young man, Guan Xiaoping, slightly frowned. Although it was a rare high grade, it was still a bit off from the goal of excellent in his heart. However, he quickly raised his head. Although he could not compare to Zhou Yuxian, compared to the others present, he was only second to one. His gaze swept over the youths, carrying a trace of superiority and disdain. When his gaze landed on Qin Feng, it carried a trace of provocation. Soon, after Yao passed the test, it was finally Qin Feng's turn. Chapter 54. Next, Qin Feng. Qin Feng's eyes flickered as he smiled. He walked out from the queue and walked towards the testing platform. Qin Feng was about 15 or 16 years old, which was the time when his body was developing. His body was originally skinny and short, and his hair was dry. However, with the nourishment of elixirs these days, his body had expanded. Qin Feng was about 7 feet tall and skinny. He wore a light brown robe with black patterns embroidered on it, and a milky white feather shirt on the outside. The robe was turned up and stuffed into a white jade belt around his waist. He wore white deerskin boots for riding. His black hair was neatly combed into a bun on the top of his head with an exquisite white jade crown. It wasn't tied up or tied, and it was slightly elegant. What a graceful, elegant, cultured, and refined young man. Qin Feng, what a handsome person. Could he be a descendant of the Qin clan, one of the 9 great clans of Mountain River City? In the crowd, a young girl's eyes revealed extraordinary splendor as she whispered to her companion beside her. A young girl shook her head and denied it. He shouldn't be a member of our Qin clan. I know most of the geniuses of the Qin clan, but this person isn't affected at all. I'm afraid that he is a descendant of some small clan and came here to try his luck. However, he is destined to come here in vain. All Stars College isn't something that a descendant of a small clan like him can covet. He is just seeking his own humiliation. This young girl was a member of the Qin clan of Mountain River City. Her judgment was naturally convincing. Relax your body and place your hand on the testing platform. Don't move. On the testing platform, the middle-aged man said in a cold voice. Qin Feng walked up to the testing platform. His eyes flashed with slight ripples. Subsequently, he placed his hand on the testing platform. The testing platform was a little cold, but at this moment, the Xian array diagram on the ground suddenly released a ray of colorful light. This ray of colorful light instantly entered his body. Qin Feng closed his eyes. He could feel a strand of warmth flowing through his arm and into his body. It was warm, and the flow of energy was like a hot spring. Very soon, it circulated one round and returned to the testing stone slab. He opened his eyes only to see a beam of colorful light flying out. On the testing platform, that middle-aged man looked at the information that appeared on the testing platform. This middle-aged man, with an indifferent expression, glanced at Qin Feng in surprise. The corner of his eyes revealed a trace of strangeness. After a moment, he raised his head and slowly announced, "Qin Feng, late stage of the fourth sky of martial arts, 15 years old, excellent." After he finished speaking, the middle-aged man, who had always had a cold expression on his face, actually smiled and said again, "Little brother, I hope you can continue to work hard." This was the second time that the middle-aged man had said more than one sentence. The first time was in front of Zhou Yuxian, and the second time was in front of Qin Feng. Towards others, even geniuses like Qian Lai and Guan Xiaoping, who received an excellent evaluation, these words were neither salty nor light. On the side, a young girl was in charge of recording the results. Qin Feng's eyesight was extremely good. He could clearly see that the young girl had recorded his name in the excellent evaluation column. In the excellent evaluation column, besides him, there were only a few other names. Qin Feng nodded. His expression was calm, and he was neither arrogant nor impatient. The cold middle-aged man looked him up and down several times, and suddenly his opinion of him rose. To be able to maintain his composure after receiving such a result, his ability to maintain his composure was like a crane in a flock of chickens. The middle-aged man looked at him deeply and then waved his hand, indicating that he could leave. However, the surrounding people could not remain calm. It was as if the crowd had exploded into an uproar. What? Another excellent evaluation? Who is this Qin Feng? How can his luck be so good? He actually received an excellent evaluation. Which family's son is this? He managed to surpass so many young masters in one go. What luck to have such an excellent evaluation. One can count the number of people with 5 fingers. As the middle-aged examiner announced the result, the gazes of all the spectators landed on Qin Feng. Many discussions gushed forth like tidal waves. Numerous pairs of eyes were filled with envy, anger, and unwillingness, as though they wanted to drown Qin Feng within. Even the fairy-like young girl, Zhou Yuxian, cast a curious look. In the crowd, the arrogant young man, Guan Xiaoping, stared at the frail figure walking down from the testing platform. He bit his lips until they bled. Guan Xiaoping was trembling with jealousy. He could not believe that he had been suppressed by Qin Feng. One of his hands was tightly clenched into a fist, his sharp nails piercing into his flesh. Suddenly, Guan Xiaoping's figure rushed up and blocked Qin Feng's path. He roared angrily, "Qin Feng, I refuse to accept this. I, Guan Xiaoping, am at the 5th heavenly layer of the martial path, and you are only at the 4th heavenly layer of the martial path. In terms of age, you're also older than me. Why am I, Guan Xiaoping, a superior evaluation, while you are an excellent evaluation? They must have made a mistake. You can't leave. You have to take the test again." After the sudden change, the audience quieted down. After the silence, the surrounding pairs of eyes not only carried a trace of doubt, but also swept their gazes back and forth between Qin Feng and the experts of All Stars College. Guan Xiaoping's words seemed to make sense. Guan Xiaoping's evaluation results are that of a 12-year-old late 5th heavenly layer of the martial path, while Qin Feng is only at the late 4th heavenly layer of the martial path. According to reason, Qin Feng's evaluation results should not be higher than Guan Xiaoping's. Someone in the crowd questioned in a low voice. Could it be that the people of All Stars College made a mistake? Someone's gaze shifted to the side of All Stars College. Many of the eliminated youths' eyes lit up, and their gazes became restless. I'm afraid that All Stars College made a mistake this time. This Qin Feng is at most the young master of a small family. How could such a person obtain an excellent evaluation? The young girl from the Qin family shook her head. Her beautiful eyes carried a trace of faint confidence. She also believed that All Stars College must have made a mistake. After all, it was normal for there to be an error in the evaluation. She was even more confident. A few days ago, the young girl herself had only obtained a superior evaluation. She did not believe that she would be suppressed by a nouveau riche. Qin Feng was somewhat speechless as he looked at this young man with red eyes. Who are you to retest just because you said so? Qin Feng shook his head and prepared to ignore Guan Xiaoping's unreasonable pestering. Guan Xiaoping was furious, and a trace of malevolence appeared on his face. Qin Feng, you dare to look down on me? Qin Feng coldly glanced at Guan Xiaoping. He could not help but feel a trace of anger in his heart. He felt that this youth was really unreasonable. This evaluation was not something that Qin Feng, could make the decision. If he was not satisfied, then go find the people of All Stars College. Why did he have to look for him? He prepared to take a detour, but Guan Xiaoping blocked him again. Guan Xiaoping's eyes revealed a trace of blood-red tyranny. Since I was young, no one has dared to look down on me like this. Qin Feng, you are the first. I have decided to personally cripple you. Nouveau riche. I want to tell everyone who is the truly outstanding one. Guan Xiaoping's eyes instantly erupted with a cruel coldness. A berserk aura suddenly erupted. His 5 fingers bent into a claw like steel and grabbed at Qin Feng. He clawed out and used his family's secret technique. His body pounced like a big eagle. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, a strong wind blew beside Qin Feng's ear. He was only aiming for Qin Feng's face. It's the Guan family's high-level spirit martial realm technique. Great Rock capturing Dragon Claw. This is the Guan family's secret technique. It seems that Guan Xiaoping has practiced this technique to the small success stage. One claw is enough to split open the stomach of some fierce beasts with strong defense. The girl from the Qin family recognized the origin of Guan Xiaoping's claw, and a trace of a smile appeared on her face. Qin Feng coldly snorted. He was secretly angry. This Guan Xiaoping was too vicious. He actually wanted to cripple him just because of a disagreement. If that's the case, then don't blame me for being ruthless. A trace of ferociousness flashed across Qin Feng's eyes. He was never a timid person. When he saw that vicious claw was about to reach his face, he used the black tortoise yin yang dao and the spirit snake body movement to twist his waist at an unbelievable angle. His body slid down like a black-boned snake and dodged this dangerous claw. Snake body movement. In front of the Great Rock, how can a snake survive? Guan Xiaoping's red eyes were startled. Then, a trace of ferocious and cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. His iron claw changed and a wave of berserk qi gushed out. Suddenly, he clawed at the space exposed by Qin Feng's lower body. His speed was extremely fast. His sharp claw swept through the air as if 5 faint cold lights had broken through the void. Guan Xiaoping was extremely vicious. The timing he chose was also very appropriate. This claw was about to split open Qin Feng's stomach. From afar, many people had already closed their eyes. They were afraid to see the bloody scene that was about to happen. On the testing platform, the middle-aged man frowned and was about to make a move. Suddenly, his expression changed and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. Snakes can't touch the Great Rock. Then what about the black tortoise? Who has the power to suppress the sea? Qin Feng was expressionless. The corner of his eyes revealed a cold glint that was like the edge of a blade. The huge life and death crisis caused the 48,000 pores on his body to reflexively shrink. Qin Feng took a deep breath. His gaze was sharp. He knew that at this moment, no matter which angle he dodged to, he would be heavily injured by the sharp claws. Qin Feng's expression abruptly changed as a terrifying, baleful light erupted forth from his eyes. His chest heaved up and down as though there were huge waves crashing within. His mouth opened slightly as a formless roar of rage was emitted. Roar. This roar seemed to come from the ancient sea. It was as if an ancient mythical beast with a dragon head and a tortoise body had jumped out of the sea and roared to the sky. Black Tortoise Yin Yang Art. Black Tortoise C. Suppressing Fist. Guan Xiaoping's viciousness had completely enraged Qin Feng. He actually used the Black Tortoise Yin Yang Art, a true martial-level fist technique. A trace of dark green energy exploded from Qin Feng's body. His body suddenly bent back and rushed forward in a 90-degree angle. Like a bowstring pulled to a full moon, he suddenly bounced back like an arrow piercing through the clouds, storing energy like a bow, releasing energy like an arrow. He stretched out his arm. His arm carried a trace of terrifying energy that was like a bronze substance. Faintly, scales appeared on his arm. As he punched out, the air violently trembled. A series of terrifying sonic booms were heard wherever it passed. Bang! Qin Feng's power of the Black Tortoise exploded with all of his strength. His fierce fist power collided with Guan Xiaoping's sharp claws. Guan Xiaoping, who was full of confidence, narrowed his eyes and heard the sound of bones breaking. Qin Feng's terrifying fist power did not stop and hit Guan Xiaoping's shoulder. The terrifying fist energy blasted into Guan Xiaoping's body. In an instant, who knew how many bones in his body were shattered? With a bang, under the shocked and incredulous expressions of many youths present, Guan Xiaoping's body was blasted dozens of feet away like a cannonball. He fell to the ground and couldn't move like a dead dog. Under the shocked gazes of everyone, Qin Feng slowly raised his head and scanned the surroundings as he slowly spoke. Is there anyone else who doesn't agree? Chapter 55. Too arrogant, too pretentious. However, Qin Feng did have the ability to act pretentious. He defeated Guan Xiaoping, who was at the fifth sky of the martial path, with just one move. He beat Guan Xiaoping like a dead dog. There were 9 heavenly layers of the martial path, and each layer was a layer of heaven. He was able to defeat an enemy who was an entire realm above him. This was too amazing. Looking at the thin figure, the crowd fell into silence. Many people stared with their eyes wide open and their faces heavy. They were speechless for a long time. Guan Xiaoping was defeated. The direct descendant of the Guan clan, one of the 9 great clans of Mountain River City, Guan Xiaoping, was actually defeated in a single round. Furthermore, he was defeated by someone who was of a higher realm than him. This Qin Feng is simply a monster. After a moment of silence, someone fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva. This is unbelievable. I originally thought that defeating an enemy of a higher realm was only a legend. Today, my eyes have been opened. A middle-aged man at the fifth sky of the martial path was shocked and sighed. The Myriad Star Academy's eyesight is really outstanding, is really worthy of being an ancient academy with a long history. I originally thought that there was an error in the Myriad Star Academy's Shiena Ray test, but now I think that we were too presumptuous. A middle-aged martial artist with sharp eyes said with a wry smile, "There is always someone better than you. However, the Guan family has always been protective of their own. I'm afraid that they will not let this matter go. This young man is in trouble." The moment Guan Xiaoping was defeated, a few figures flashed through the crowd like cheetahs and landed in front of Guan Xiaoping. After a few checks, the leader frowned and said, "More than half of the young master's bones are broken, and his internal organs are shaken. Even if he doesn't die, he will become a cripple. What a vicious brat. His methods are so cruel and vicious. He really deserves to die 1,000 times over." A hunchback figure stood up. With a flash of his silhouette, he instantly appeared before Qin Feng. The face of this old man was filled with frost. His eyes were as sharp as swords and sabers, containing a terrifying coldness within. This old man turned out to be Uncle Fu. Previously, he looked like a nice guy, but now he suddenly erupted with such a terrifying aura. The aura emitted from his body was 10 times stronger than that of the ancient giant cloud ridge tiger that Qin Feng had encountered. Uncle Fu was at least a martial artist at the 8th heavenly layer. As soon as he appeared, a cold and tyrannical aura immediately locked onto Qin Feng's body. A deathly pressure appeared in Qin Feng's heart. Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. He knew that the old man in front of him probably wanted to kill him. Fu Bo was furious. His eyes were cold as he ordered forcefully. Qin Feng, come with me to the Guan clan. Qin Feng secretly cursed in his heart, but his face was full of defiance as he spoke without fear. Guan family? What kind of brothel is this? Qin Feng, would never go to such a filthy place. Uncle Fu's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. His gaze was overbearing. Qin Feng, I'm afraid this is not up to you. Then get a try. Let everyone see the Guan clan's ability to bully the weak. Qin Feng's face was unyielding. Although his words were impolite, he was complaining in his heart. What bad luck. This Guan Xiaoping actually has a martial artist at the 8th heavenly layer protecting him. Although I've cultivated hard for half a month and reached the late 4th heavenly layer from the early 4th heavenly layer, I'm still too far away from the 8th heavenly layer. I'm afraid I won't be able to gain any advantage in a fight. Qin Feng secretly gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He was still too weak. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been forced into such a predicament by a lackey. Gradually, noises came from the surroundings. The Guan clan was too arrogant. Everything that happened in the field was clearly seen by everyone. It was Guan Xiaoping who was rude and attacked first. Qin Feng was forced to fight back in self-defense. To be honest, Guan Xiaoping overestimated himself. Not only did he fail to step on others, he was also beaten into a cripple. Guan Xiaoping's actions could only be said to be reaping what he sowed. Uncle Fu first let Guan Xiaoping loose. Now that he was beaten into a cripple, he arrogantly denounced him. Using the strong to bully the weak, this style was too low. However, the Guan clan had always been protective and strong. Although there were people who criticized them, no one spoke up to stop them. Even a young girl from the Qin clan rejoiced in their misfortune. Stop. At this moment, a faint voice came. The middle-aged man on the testing platform suddenly walked over. He seemed to appear out of thin air between the two like a whirlwind. This middle-aged man's speed was too fast. In the faint air, there was only a faint movement of his shadow. Pulse condensation stage. Qin Feng's pupils contracted. Qin Feng was certain that this middle-aged man was a pulse condensation stage martial artist who had condensed true power. Uncle Fu's eyesight was extraordinary. He immediately saw through the middle-aged man's true power. Uncle Fu frowned, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. After a moment, he smiled and said, Mr. Zhao, what are you doing? This Qin Feng's heart is vicious, and his actions are ruthless. Without saying a word, he attacked and injured my family's young master. This kind of vicious person is not worthy of entering All-Stars College. Why do you? The middle-aged man, Mr. Zhao, coldly interrupted. Enough, don't talk nonsense. This is the location of All-Stars College's testing. Qin Feng is on the STARS ranking and is a preparatory disciple of All-Stars College. He has already entered the sights of All-Stars College. Before he is eliminated, no power can touch him. As for whether he is worthy of entering All-Stars College, that is not something you can decide. It is also not your turn to give pointers. Uncle Fu's face was ashen. The indifferent middle-aged man ignored Uncle Fu's expression and said coldly. Guan Xiaoping, on the other hand, privately fought on the testing field and questioned the rules of the college. He has no respect for the dignity of the college and is extremely arrogant. On behalf of All-Stars College, I declare that Guan Xiaoping is now disqualified from the testing field and will never be accepted. As for you privately threatening a preparatory disciple of All-Stars College and disrupting the order of the testing field, you will cripple your own cultivation. The middle-aged man ignored the dumbfounded Uncle Fu and said coldly, Do you want to do it yourself, or do you want me to do it? Uncle Fu's face was gloomy, and flames of fury flashed in his eyes. Mr. Zhao, we are from the Guan family. Don't tell me you. The middle-aged man's eyes flashed with coldness. It seems like you want me to do it myself. His figure instantly disappeared and reappeared a moment later. However, Uncle Fu, who had previously been overbearing, was now lying on the ground with a pale face. It was as if he had aged by dozens of years. The surrounding people could see that Uncle Fu's dantian had been destroyed. His cultivation had flowed out like torrential water, and he had really become a cripple. This expert from All Stars College was really merciless. After crippling Uncle Fu with one move, the middle-aged man's gaze fell on Qin Feng. Qin Feng felt as though he was being stared at by an ancient, ferocious beast, and his expression changed slightly. Fortunately, this gaze moved away for a moment, and the middle-aged man slowly returned to the testing platform. He still had that cold face of a door god, but his eyes were incomparably cold and sharp. It was so dazzling that it pierced the surrounding people's eyes. The middle-aged man said sternly as a chill rose from his heart, "I don't care who you are, and I don't care what grudges you have, but you must not disturb the test of All Stars College. Anyone who dares to challenge the dignity of All Stars College will pay the price. No one can ignore the dignity of All Stars College." A loud voice resounded in the square. It was deafening, tyrannical, and unreasonable. The Guan family was tyrannical, unreasonable, and unreasonable, but compared to All Stars College, they were nothing. The square was deathly silent, but after the deathly silence, many pairs of eyes lit up with fervor. Many of them had burning gazes. Not only did the strength of All Stars College not intimidate them, it made them feel that it was only natural. Youths worshiped the strong the most, and for a moment, the test became even more lively. The number of people who registered for the test was like a tide. Many of the youths who were eliminated felt even more disappointed. Beside them, the elders who accompanied them had a dark expression. They felt even more dejected as they looked at the juniors beside them. On the other hand, the youths who successfully passed the first test were beaming with joy. They all felt that their faces were shining, and they were filled with yearning for All Stars College. Uncle Fu stood up shakily from the ground. When he heard the middle-aged man's tyrannical words, he lowered his head and didn't dare to say a word. Although the Guan family was strong, they were nothing compared to a colossus like All Stars College. Uncle Fu didn't even dare to mention a trace of hatred. He was afraid that he would bring disaster to the Guan family. They couldn't afford to offend All Stars College, but he hated Qin Feng to the bone. His eyes were scarlet red, as though blood was about to drip out. Qin Feng was expressionless. When he saw the resentment on Uncle Fu's face, he knew that he had thoroughly offended the Guan family this time. This time, neither he nor the Guan family gained any benefits. He had offended the Guan family, and the Guan family was trampled on by the people of All Stars College to expand their influence. Qin Feng didn't care. Although it seemed like he had been used and felt uncomfortable, he had also gained some benefits. He had obtained a protective talisman. As long as the people of All Stars College were around, the Guan family wouldn't dare to openly deal with him. If they couldn't do it openly, they would do it secretly. Guan family. Qin Feng's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. After a moment, he gave some instructions to the people of the Qin family and left the test alone. All Stars College had 3 tests. The second test was the attribute test, and it was scheduled for a few days later. He still had plenty of time to prepare. He headed towards the most prosperous city in Shana City, South City. Chapter 56. What happened to Little Peng? What happened to my son? In the Guan family's mansion in the south of the city, a large group of footsteps came from outside. A beautiful, dignified, and elegant lady rushed into the backyard with an anxious look on her face. She was followed by a large group of maids, nannies, and guards. A moment later, the lady's heart-wrenching screams came from the backyard. "My son, who beat you up like this? Which bastard is so heartless? Where's that old dog Fuba? Where did he go? He allowed my son to be injured like this. This madam is going to skin that derelict in his duty alive." "Madam, Fu Ba's cultivation was crippled by someone," a voice softly said. "Then where is the culprit? Are you all useless? Don't you know how to use the experts of your family?" The furious voice sharply reprimanded. The voice of the person who replied became even softer. "Madam, That person is protected by the experts of All Stars College. Mr. Zhao said that before All Stars College's test is over, unless that person is eliminated, no one can touch him. Mr. Zhao, All Stars College. The noblewoman gritted her teeth and sneered after a while. Idiot, do you really think that Mr. Zhao will care about the life and death of someone he doesn't know? He only said this to protect the face of All Stars College. Since All Stars College wants face, then we will give them face. However, we can still kill him. As for how to do it, you don't need this madam to teach you. Yes, madam, we understand. After we kill him, we will wait for you Man Tang to casually find a woman and say that he died from excessive indulgence. This way, when All Stars College pursues the matter, they won't blame it on our Guan family. That voice said with a smug smile. Then why aren't you going? This madam wants him to die immediately. I don't want to see him live for another 15 minutes. The noblewoman sharply said. Qin Feng came to South City and walked straight to the Mystic Hall where the Mystic Association was located. The Mystic Association was one of the strongest first-rate factions in the Spirit Sea continent. This organization had a long history and was born in an era that no one knew. The Mystic Association, the Apothecary Association, and the Weapon Refining Association had always been known as the three ancient great guilds. They were respectively passed down from the mystic ancestor, alchemy ancestor, and weapon ancestor of the three ancient ancestors. On the Linghai continent, every main city had a branch of the Mystic Cultivator Association, Apothecary Association, and Blacksmith Association. As one of the largest cities in the Yin Kingdom, Shana City was no exception. Outside the Mystic Cultivator Association, it was as busy as a marketplace. There was an endless stream of people and carriages outside. From time to time, important figures dressed in luxurious clothes would appear here, and occasionally, mystic cultivators in black mystic robes could be seen. Opposite the Mystic Cultivator Association was the Apothecary Association. Not far away, about 500 steps to the left, was the Weapon Refinement Association. The standard robes for the alchemists of the Armament Guild were gray in color, and the sleeves were embroidered with the pattern of a sword and a blade crossing each other. The standard robes of the Apothecary Guild were white, as pure as snow. The robes were made from the snow silk from the stomach of a high-grade snow silkworm. A small cauldron was embroidered on the sleeves. According to the grade of the cauldron, the size of the cauldron ranged from 3 to 6 legs. The colors would also be different. The standard robes for the mystic cultivators of the Mystic Cultivator Association were black and looked very solemn. A small pagoda was embroidered on the sleeves. Walking into the Mystic Cultivator Association, a faint, tranquil smell greeted them, making them feel relaxed and happy. In the spacious hall, people came and went. Most people were focused on their own matters. When they saw someone come in, they only glanced at them with a trace of doubt in their eyes before they immediately buried their heads in their own matters. Mystic cultivators were different from alchemy and blacksmithing. Every true mystic cultivator was a knowledgeable person. Every Xian formation diagram was extraordinarily complicated and required extremely precise calculations and deductions. Naturally, to become a mystic cultivator, one needed more time to systematically learn and absorb all kinds of knowledge. It had to be known that a mystic cultivator's deduction ability had reached an extremely abnormal level. Otherwise, the Mystic Cultivator Association wouldn't be the one with the fewest members among the 3 major associations. Qin Feng was here to take the Mystic Cultivator assessment and receive his Mystic Cultivator rank badge. Standing in the hall, Qin Feng's gaze swept across and landed on a backstage area that was responsible for receiving guests. A cute girl in green was lying on the backstage and pouting in boredom. Qin Feng was about to go over when a middle-aged man wearing a black Mystic Cultivator robe walked in from outside. This middle-aged man was in his 30s. His eyebrows were long and narrow, and his gaze gave off a malicious and arrogant feeling. Master Lu Shi, you're here. Are you here to look for the president? Please come in. The cute girl in green hurriedly ran out from the backstage and greeted him with respect in her eyes. In, Lu Shi's gaze was slanted. He didn't even look at the girl in green and walked straight inside. Master Lu Shi, it's actually him. I heard that Master Lu Shi is a meridian condensation realm martial artist, and he's also a very rare official mystic cultivator. Master Lu Shi is one of the few official mystic cultivators in our Shana City. He's an esteemed guest of the various large families in Shana City. There are countless martial artists in Shana City who want to be his disciple. However, Master Lu Shi seems to have an unwritten rule that he only accepts disciples from a few large families. His 16 disciples all seem to be from large families. I heard that Master Lu Shi is going to start accepting disciples again. Unfortunately, the Master's requirements are too high. Innate mental strength is below level 6, so he won't accept any. Those above 15 years old won't be accepted. Those below the 4th firmament of the martial path won't be accepted. Master Lu is probably here today to pick out good seedlings from the Mystic Cultivator Association. I heard that the elites of the various large families in Tianhe City are here today. Look, the people from the 9 great families are here too. Qin Feng was currently registering backstage. He didn't know that there were a few people staring at him from afar. A young girl in the prime of her youth looked at a familiar figure in surprise. Isn't that Qin Feng? Why is he here at the Mystic Cultivator Association? Could it be that he also wants to take the Mystic Cultivator assessment and become Master Lu Shi's disciple? The young girl was from the 9 great families. When Qin Feng took the assessment at All Stars College, she was also present. She even saw with her own eyes how Qin Feng defeated Guan Xiaoping in one move. An iceberg-like young girl coldly looked at the figure in the backstage and said with a trace of coldness, "Qin Feng? He's the one who severely injured my younger brother? Sister Wolin, it's him," the young girl said with respect. The iceberg-like young girl in front of her was not simple. She was a famous genius from one of the 9 great families, the Guan family. Not only did she reach the mid-stage of the 6th firmament of the martial path at such a young age, but she was also a noble mystic cultivator trainee and had long since become Master Lu Shi's disciple. The iceberg-like young girl coldly stared at Qin Feng. A sharp cold glint flashed across her eyes. She quickly sneered and followed Lu Shi's figure inside. Chapter 57. Sir, this should be your first time coming to our Mountain River City's Mystic Association. You want to become a mystic, right? Please fill in your information first. After that, you can participate in the spiritual power test. If you can successfully pass the test at our Mountain River City's Mystic Association, it proves that you have the aptitude to become a mystic, and you can enter the Mystic Association to learn the way of mystic. Looking at Qin Feng with a smile, the green-clothed girl sized up Qin Feng a few times with her beautiful eyes. She then told him about some of the registration matters. After speaking, her beautiful eyes glanced at the pensive Qin Feng and smiled. If you're lucky, you might be able to quickly become a noble mystic apprentice. Our Mountain River City's Mystic Association has an official mystic explaining the way of mystic in the association every month. If you can pass the test, you'll have the right to listen to the lecture. If you're lucky, you might be chosen by a noble master and be taken in as a disciple. That's reaching the heavens in a single bound. The ranks of mystic were very strict. They were divided into apprentice mystic and official mystic. Normally, apprentice mystic could only draw some basic mystic formations. Official mystic masters could grasp high-level mystic formations. If they could draw a level 1 mystic formation, they would naturally be a grade 1 mystic master. If they could draw a more complicated level 2 mystic formation, they would be a grade 2 mystic master. The strongest mystic in Mountain River City was only a grade 2 mystic master. Qin Feng sized up a girl in front of him. The girl's cute and pure appearance was very lovable. Qin Feng smiled. This is indeed my first time coming to the Mountain River City's Mystic Association. However, I'm not here to test if I have the aptitude to become a mystic master. I'm here to receive a mystic master badge. You're an apprentice mystic master? The green-clothed girl was stunned. Apprentice mystic master, right? Qin Feng blinked. He rubbed his chin and said with uncertainty, Qin Feng himself wasn't sure what mystic master level he was. He had countless high-level mystic formations in his mind, and he had even deciphered some immemorial mystic formations. However, setting up high-level mystic formations usually consumed a lot of mental strength. Without the help of powerful mental strength, it was impossible to draw them. Qin Feng could easily draw level 9 mystic formations at his peak in his previous life. When he transmigrated, most of his mental strength was wiped out, so he didn't know if he could draw high-level mystic formations. When the girl in green saw Qin Feng's expression, she immediately misunderstood, and a trace of disappointment flashed across her beautiful eyes. She thought that the martial artist in front of her was another rash person who came to the Mystic Association to mess around. Because there were often some martial artists who came into contact with some knowledge of Xian formations through some special channels. They thought that they were Xian masters and came to the Xian Master Association to take the test. Mystic Association, Mystic Association, Mystic Association, Mystic Association, Mystic Association, Master Badge Mystic Qin. Mystic Mr. Qin. It's like this. People who receive a badge from our Mystic Association for the first time have to undergo a mental strength test first. If your mental strength reaches the standard, we can prepare a Mystic Master rank test for you. If you pass, we can award you a Mystic Master rank badge. If you agree, I'll register you first. After you register, you can take the mental strength test. Then let's follow the procedure. Qin Feng's gaze swept over and immediately saw the changes in the girl's expression. How could he not know what this girl was thinking? However, he didn't explain anything and only nodded indifferently. Name? Qin Feng. Age? 15 years old. After the girl in green recorded it, she looked up and asked again, "May I ask who your mentor is?" "I don't have a mentor." Qin Feng rubbed his nose awkwardly. Then, he said under the girl's understanding expression, "I self-taught." The girl in green rolled her eyes at Qin Feng in annoyance. She muttered to herself as she recorded it. Another hothead. Becoming a mystic master by self-teaching? Dream on. What a waste of his girl's time. This detestable fellow. Perhaps Master Lu Shi is explaining the Tao of mystic formations right now. If it weren't for a hothead like you, this girl might have been able to listen for a while longer. Master Lu Shi said that as long as this girl was diligent, she would have a chance to become an intern mystic master within 5 years. The girl's mood instantly became extremely bad. She instinctively felt that this fellow in front of her was very detestable. After she finished filling in the information, she pointed at a passage at the side and pouted. "Take the form and take the test over there." Qin Feng shrugged innocently. He was secretly puzzled. He didn't know how he offended this cute girl. She was as gentle as water just a moment ago, but she suddenly became so fiery. In the end, he could only attribute it to women being fickle. Qin Feng held the registration form in his hand and arrived at a large door a moment later. There were 2 burly men guarding the door. As his gaze swept across the 2 burly men, Qin Feng's pupils slightly constricted. He discovered that these 2 people were actually martial artists above the 7th celestial layer of the martial path. When the 2 burly men looked over, an oppressive aura came from them. It was even stronger than Uncle Fu's. They were truly rich and overbearing. Even the gatekeepers were martial artists above the 8th celestial layer of the martial path. Qin Feng inwardly shivered. He waved the registration form in his hand. The 2 burly men nodded. One of them took the rank form from Qin Feng's hand and handed it over. After a moment, he came out and waved his hand, indicating that he could enter. "Many thanks." Qin Feng nodded. After entering the entrance, a soft light illuminated the spacious hall as if it was daytime. There was a group of people taking the test in the hall. Qin Feng saw that Master Lu Shi, who had entered earlier, was also at the side. He had a noble status and was standing on a high platform. He held a registration form in his hand and nodded from time to time. He should be selecting people. Beside Lu Shi, there were a few young men and women wearing black Xian master robes. They should be his disciples. In the hall, when they saw another person enter, some people raised their heads and revealed a trace of doubt in their eyes. When they saw that it was an unfamiliar youth, they no longer paid any attention to him. Instead, they focused their attention on a testing platform in the center. At this moment, someone on the testing platform was placing his hand on a sparkling and translucent crystal ball. After a moment, the crystal ball emitted 4 faint halos. Soon, a voice announced, "Yu Yuan, innate level 4 mental power disqualified." Qin Feng shook his head. Qin Feng knew that innate mental power was divided into 18 levels. Level 1 was the weakest, and level 18 was the strongest. Level 18 was also known as perfect mental power. The cultivation of Xian formations was very taxing on one's mental power. It also had very strict requirements for innate mental power. If one's innate mental power was too weak, no matter how intelligent one was, one's attainments as a Xian master would be limited and would not be able to become a true Xian master. If there was a limit, generally, only those with level 6 innate mental power and above would have the qualifications to become a Xian master. Below this limit, it was fine to just dabble in it. If one tried to forcefully deduce Xian formations, it could lead to heart failure and death. A pair of cold eyes stared at Qin Feng. The moment Qin Feng entered, Guan Roland noticed Qin Feng's figure. Her beautiful eyes were filled with coldness as she glanced at Qin Feng. Guan Roland turned around and whispered a few words to Lu Shi. Lu Shi raised his head and glanced at Qin Feng's location. The corner of his eyes revealed a trace of coldness. He nodded and stared at Qin Feng with disgust. Chapter 58. If the prerequisites to become an alchemist were harsh, then the prerequisites to become a Xian master were simply harsh. Innate mental strength of level 6 was an extremely harsh condition. The average person's innate mental strength was usually at level 0. Having innate mental strength of level 1 and above was already considered an extraordinary talent. However, having innate mental strength of level 6 and above was absolutely rare. However, some people were different. Normally, the children of experts would start using spiritual herbs to build their foundation while in the womb to strengthen their innate mental strength. This way, the fetus would be close to a spirit embryo. After birth, their innate talent would generally be stronger than the average person. This was also the reason why most of the aristocratic family elites in the hall had innate mental strength of level 4 and level 5. In the hall, the majority of the dozens of boys and girls waiting to be tested had mental strength of level 4 and level 5. The weakest was at level 2. None of them were level 0. Song Kun, mental strength of level 11, qualified. Suddenly, a slightly shocked voice sounded. Hua! The hall suddenly became lively. Pairs of eyes widened. Innate mental strength of level 11. That was definitely an extraordinary talent, 1 in 10,000. They recognized this Song Cohen. He was a disciple of the Song family, one of the 9 great families of Shauna City. His status was the same as theirs. However, now that he was tested to have such a strong innate mental strength talent, his status would probably change very soon. All the boys and girls were envious. A handsome youth with a face full of arrogance excitedly walked down from the crystal testing platform. Song Kun puffed out his chest, and the arrogance in his eyes was not concealed. It was no wonder he was so arrogant. Among so many people, only his innate mental strength had reached the standard. Congratulations, young Master Song Kun. Your innate mental strength has reached level 11. You have the qualifications to become an honorable Xian master. However, I still have to ask you one thing. Have you cultivated mental strength before? Master Lu Shi asked with some surprise. This young master naturally has not cultivated mental strength before. Song Kun swept a glance across the pairs of boys and girls in the hall who were looking at him with eyes full of reverence. The pride in his eyes could not be concealed. Good. Lu Shi was overjoyed. In his happiness, he actually said good 3 times. Lucy originally came to the Xian Master Association to host the mental strength testing ceremony as a matter of routine. Who would have thought that he would actually meet such a good seedling? He couldn't help but feel excited for a moment. Lucy asked eagerly, "Are you willing to become my disciple to cultivate the path of a mystic cultivator?" "If you can become my disciple, I guarantee that you can become an intern mystic cultivator within 3 years. You might even become an official mystic cultivator within 10 years. In the silent hall, pairs of eyes were filled with jealousy and envy. Although it was a long time to become an intern mystic cultivator within 3 years, it was actually an extreme amount of time. Ordinary people would need at least 5 years to become an intern mystic cultivator, and it was even more difficult to become an official mystic cultivator. Some people would be stuck at the threshold for 20 years, 30 years, or even their entire lives, unable to become an official mystic cultivator. Song Kuan was overjoyed and hurriedly went forward to pay his respects. For a moment, the master and disciple were all smiling, and the scene was very festive. In the following tests, there was no suspense. Most of the people were eliminated, and only one person barely managed to reach level 6. However, with Song Kuan's level 11 innate spiritual power, his dazzling results were nowhere to be seen. This person's results were naturally very ordinary. Lucy didn't even look at him, causing this youth who was tested to have a level 6 spiritual power to feel extremely depressed. Soon, it was Qin Feng's turn. Qin Feng was the last person. Just as Qin Feng was about to walk up, Lucy suddenly walked up to the testing platform. There was a faint smile in his eyes as he intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Qin Feng, who was holding the registration slip in the corner. The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile as he spoke to the people in charge of the testing. "Today's test will end here. This lord has accepted an excellent disciple, and it can be considered a consummate stage. Everyone has worked hard. It just so happens that this lord has accepted a beloved disciple today. Everyone, come to this lord's residence to drink some wine." The experts in charge of the testing smiled with a trace of fervor in their eyes. One of them looked at the remaining name list in his hand. This was the last name list for today's test. He then looked at the time. According to the rules of the Mystic Cultivator Association, they had to close the testing array after 2 hours. After a moment, they shook their heads and casually threw the name list into a corner. There wasn't much time left for the test, but there weren't many opportunities to get close to this great mystic cultivator whose name shook the entire Mountain River City. Thus, they immediately spoke up. "All right, since it's the great master's invitation, everyone can call it a day. We can't not give the great master face. Everyone, let's go drink some wine. Let's go together. Let's go together. Congratulations, great master, for accepting an excellent disciple." For a moment, everyone's compliments and bootlicking voices resounded in the hall. On the contrary, Qin Feng, who wanted to take the test, was pushed to the side. Qin Feng frowned. He noticed that when Lucy was speaking, his gaze seemed to be intentionally or unintentionally sweeping over him. There was even a trace of a smile on the corner of his mouth. On purpose? Qin Feng didn't understand when he had offended this honorable great master Lu Shi. Qin Feng also noticed that behind Lu Shi, a young girl was staring at him with a frosty expression. The cold light in her eyes was faintly discernible. Although he didn't understand the whole story, Qin Feng naturally wasn't willing to make a trip for nothing. Seeing that these people wanted to close the test formation, a trace of cold lightning flashed through Qin Feng's eyes. He immediately took a step forward and immediately used a trace of his inner breath to shout loudly. "Wait, I haven't taken a mental power test yet." Rumble. The sudden voice was like a thunderclap that exploded in the hall. Qin Feng deliberately mixed a trace of his inner breath into his voice. The loud voice was like the explosion of wind and thunder. The entire hall, including the people outside the Mystic Cultivator Association, heard this shout. Many people stopped what they were doing and looked in the direction of the test hall in surprise. In a room on the second floor of the test hall, 2 old men who were talking suddenly had a change in expression. One of them said in surprise, This voice seems to be coming from the test hall. Who has the guts to actually make a ruckus in the Mystic Cultivator Association? The other old man hesitated slightly, his snow-white eyebrows knitted together as he spoke with a trace of anger. The mental power test this time seems to be presided over by Lu Shi. What exactly is he doing? The two of them walked out of the room and quickly rushed to the test hall. The hall was dead silent. Only the loud voice echoed in the hall. Everyone's gazes were suddenly attracted and landed on the figure in the hall. Dressed in snow white, he was as quiet as a virgin and untainted by even a speck of dust. He had sharp eyebrows and starry eyes, and there was a faint trace of unyielding and sharpness in his eyes. Many young girls' beautiful eyes lit up, and they couldn't help but curiously look at this figure. Lu Shi's face instantly turned pitch black, and anger was brewing in his eyes. He stared coldly at Qin Feng and spoke with an unkind expression. "Brat, what are you trying to do?" Qin Feng's expression was indifferent, as if the person who spoke just now wasn't him. He waved the test form in his hand. "I'm not trying to do anything. I just want to remind everyone who is in high spirits that you have to wait before drinking and celebrating. Mountain River City's Mystic Association shouldn't have left the Mystic Association headquarters yet, right? I don't think the few of you will trample on the rules of the Mystic Association headquarters, right?" Qin Feng pointed at a poster hanging on the wall. On the poster was the opening time of the Mystic Association's mental power test. According to the time limit, there were still 2 hours before the Mystic Association's mental power test could be closed. Lu Shi's face was gloomy, and his eyes were cold. The reprimand that was about to come out of his mouth was blocked by Qin Feng's words. Lu Shi was furious. His eyes were cold, and a trace of gloomy, killing intent surged. He originally only wanted to forgive Qin Feng because of his disciple's complaint and wanted to vent his anger for his disciple. Who would have thought that Qin Feng would be so difficult to deal with? He actually didn't play by the rules and directly shouted. With this shout, the entire Mystic Association would probably be alarmed. He couldn't use any means to suppress Qin Feng anymore. If he didn't handle it well, he, Lu Shi, would become the laughingstock of the Mystic Association. Lu Shi only felt his face tremble. His face was dark and gloomy. "Damn little bastard. I only wanted to suppress you to let Lin or vent her anger. Now that you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being ruthless. After you leave the Mystic Association." Lu Shi's heart was filled with killing intent. The experts in charge of the mental power test also had ugly expressions. They clearly didn't expect someone to not give face to the Mystic Association and directly expose this matter, putting them in an awkward position. They were abnormally angry and worried. If this matter alarmed the higher-ups of the Mystic Association, they would be guilty of dereliction of duty. Actually, this wasn't a big deal normally. They had done it a few times before, and many people didn't dare to say anything on account of the Mystic Association's prestige. Only today was a mistake. The few of them quickly looked at Lu Shi. Lu Shi took the test form that a warrior picked up from the ground. He walked forward and looked coldly at Qin Feng as he berated. "Qin Feng, right? I've heard of you. You injured the young master of the Guan family, Guan Xiaoping, at All-Stars College's test ceremony. You're so young, but you're vicious, causing trouble, and lawless." Lu Shi didn't hide the disgust in his eyes as he sneered. "I'm telling you, I won't accept a student like you. Just give up. Moreover, I can also tell you that not only me, but the other official mystic masters in the Mystic Association won't accept you as their disciple either." Song Kuan also jumped out. He sized up Qin Feng with a hint of arrogance in his eyes as he sneered. "Brat, you heard teacher's words, right? Being a Xian master is a noble profession, and there might not even be one in 10,000 people who have the talent to become a Xian master. A nouveau riche like you should stop dreaming. Not everyone has the qualifications to become a Xian master, so just give up." Chapter 59. The hall was silent. Many young men and women looked at the thin figure in white in the center of the hall with sympathy and pity. He was too irrational to directly contradict Master Lu Shi. On the side, A young mystic cultivator in a black robe shook his head indifferently. Young and vigorous. Many martial artists let out a sigh and looked at Qin Feng with pity. In their opinion, the words of Lu Shi and his disciple had undoubtedly cut off Qin Feng's path as a mystic cultivator. Without a mentor to lead the way, no matter how talented one was, they could forget about truly walking the path of a mystic cultivator. After offending a big shot like Lu Shi, it was unknown whether Qin Feng could establish himself in Mountain River City in the future. However, to everyone's surprise, Qin Feng only faintly smiled when facing the pressure from Lu Shi and his disciple. It was as if he didn't care about Lu Shi's words at all. It was as if he didn't care at all. Master Lu, I'm only here to test. Please open the mystic formation and let me test it. As for becoming a disciple, after a slight pause, Qin Feng said indifferently, not just anyone has the qualifications to become my Qin Feng's mentor. Hiss. One arrogant youth. Many people in the crowd gasped as they looked at the youth in the center of the hall. They felt that this youth was too arrogant. As expected, he's young and vigorous and doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Master Lu Shi is one of the few second-grade mystic cultivators in Mountain River City. With this identity, he will be the center of attention no matter where he goes. Many extremely talented martial artists can't even ask for his position. Who does Qin Feng think he is? A dignified mystic cultivator in black robes who had rushed over said disdainfully. Many of the black-robed mystic cultivators who had rushed over to watch the show also shook their heads with disgust. They gave Qin Feng a death sentence and decided that no matter what, they had to ban this youth who offended the dignity of mystic cultivators. In the crowd, two old men who came down from the second floor happened to see this scene. Some of the martial artists who had rushed over recognized one of the old men. One of them was the president of Mountain River City's Mystic Association, Zhui Song. The other person was also an old man. Since this old man could stand with the president of the Mystic Association, Zhui Song, he was naturally not a nobody. The two old men were also displeased. Inwardly, he thought to himself, I don't know where this brat came from, but he dares to spout nonsense and doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Lu Shi's face was gloomy as he clenched his fists within his large sleeves. He glanced at the expressions of some of the mystic cultivators who had rushed over from the corner of his eyes and relaxed. This brat is simply seeking his own death. He actually dared to say such words. This has already incurred the wrath of the masses. This is even better. After the testing ceremony, perhaps I will let you have a taste of my methods. Lu Shi coldly glanced at Qin Feng and sneered when he saw the tester reactivate the Xian formation. Qin Feng, since you want to take the test, then let's begin. However, I'll still say the same thing. If it's not yours, you won't be able to obtain it. Song Kuan walked in front of Qin Feng and said with a smile, the saddest thing in this world is that even though you know the outcome, you still have to struggle forward. Qin Feng, remember my words. Qin Feng sneered. Under Song Kuan's gloomy expression, he walked past Song Kuan and stepped onto the testing platform. In the hall, everyone's gaze was focused on the delicate and pretty figure on the testing platform. Qin Feng took a deep breath. His eyes were like an ancient well without any ripples. He looked at the testing crystal ball on the crystal pillar in front of him. He slowly extended his hand and placed it on the crystal ball in the middle of the testing platform. Although Qin Feng had some confidence in his heart, but at this critical moment, his nerves were still stretched taut. Just now, he had offended everyone badly. If he was tested to have a level 0 innate mental power, then he would be in big trouble. The crystal ball was warm to the touch, soft and bright. Qin Feng closed his eyes and entered a state of meditation. As he closed his eyes, a trace of light appeared on the surface of the crystal ball. Look, the first halo has appeared on the crystal ball. He has at least a level 1 innate mental energy. A young girl exclaimed. It's only one halo. Don't make a fuss. A level 1 innate mental energy is not very useful. Qin Feng has already offended all the Xian masters in Shana City. There's nothing he can do, someone said while shaking his head. Gradually, the halo on the crystal ball became brighter and brighter. Slowly, another halo appeared, 2 halos. Boom. After a slight pause, the crystal ball suddenly exploded with light like a small sun. The 3rd halo, the 4th halo, the 5th halo, the 6th halo, the 7th halo. One halo after another suddenly exploded. In the hall, pairs of eyes stared at the halo that exploded from the crystal ball in the middle of the hall. Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. 1, 2, 3, 4. It directly rushed to 7 halos. It's not over yet, someone shouted. However, no one paid attention to his intense reaction. They only stared at the crystal ball that was getting brighter and brighter. On the crystal ball, the 10th halo quickly appeared, followed by the 11th. Gotcha! Song Kuan clenched his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He almost couldn't believe his eyes. This bastard actually also has a level 11 mental energy. Song Kuan's eyes were as red as blood. His brain was in a daze. However, what made Song Kuan's expression change was that the increasingly dazzling halo on the crystal ball did not dim. It was still rising. 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 halos, innate level 18 mental energy. Song Kuan was completely stunned. In the hall, there was dead silence. One could hear a pin drop. Pairs of eyes stared blankly at the crystal ball that was emitting a rich and dazzling light. 18 halos? Heavens, innate level 18 mental energy. Many young men and women turned their necks around with difficulty. They looked at the dazzling halos on the crystal ball in shock and counted them over and over again. At this moment, Qin Feng also opened his eyes. The crystal ball had already turned into a small sun. The halos were magnificent. Looking at the halos, a smile appeared on Qin Feng's face. However, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Innate level 18 mental energy. This test result was not unexpected. He was originally a great emperor who was half a step into the deified realm. Although most of his enormous mental energy had been destroyed, the small portion that was left was still relatively large. However, the people in the hall were not as calm as him. Monster! This Qin Feng is simply a monster. A steady black-robed mystic cultivator muttered to himself. Inconceivable, inconceivable. An old mystic cultivator who loved wine as much as his life directly crushed the wine gourd in his hand. He didn't even notice that the wine that he treasured as much as his life spilled all over the floor. No wonder he was so confident. Level 18, innate level 18 mental energy. Lu Shi indeed doesn't have the qualifications to teach him. In the corner, a short old mystic cultivator said with a sigh. He wore a black mystic cultivator robe with 2 golden lines on the sleeves. He was also a level 2 mystic cultivator. However, a trace of ridicule quickly appeared in the corner of his eyes. It was a smile of schadenfreude. However, this way, our great master Lu won't be able to get off the stage. In the crowd, Zhuosong didn't even notice that he had pulled out a strand of his beard. After a while, he said to his old friend, who was somewhat stunned with a bitter smile, "Old friend, don't you think we're really old?" Another hale and hearty old man came back to his senses when he heard this. He rolled his eyes at his old friend who had known him for decades. "Old Ghost Zhua, you should be secretly happy. You're about to leave your post, yet you still picked up such a big bargain. I'm afraid your transfer this time will have to be changed." Zhuosong chuckled and didn't say anything. However, his eyes were brighter than ever. His excitement was overflowing with words. For the president of the Mystic Cultivator Association, who had the responsibility of selecting talents for the Mystic Cultivator Association, if he could unearth a good seedling with extraordinary potential and nurture him into an official Mystic Cultivator, he would be able to obtain a lot of benefits in terms of evaluation. It would be greatly beneficial for his promotion. Although he knew that a good seedling with level 18 innate, level 18 mental energy was definitely not someone a Mystic Cultivator of his level could come into contact with. Those big shots definitely wouldn't allow him to taint such a seedling. However, just the reward of unearthing this top-notch genius would allow him to rise several levels in one go. Compared to the joy of Zhuosong and Zhuosong, Lu Shi's expression could no longer be described as ugly. Shock, anger, and regret were no longer enough to describe his feelings. Level 18, innate level 18 mental energy. Lu Shi understood the meaning of this aptitude better than anyone else. When he thought about the words he had said earlier, Lu Shi's face almost turned the color of pig liver. Please recommend this book and add it to your collection. There should be another update in the afternoon. Chapter 60. Congratulations, little fellow. You have the innate mental strength of level 18 perfection. You have the qualifications to become an outstanding Xian master. From now on, the first and second floors of the Mountain River City's Xian Master Association's library will be open to you for free. Every week, you can also come to the Xian Master Association to listen to Xian Masters explain the way of Xian Masters. If you are willing, you can join any master under the Mountain River City's Xian Master Association and learn the way of Xian Masters. Zhuosong squeezed through the crowd and looked at the youth in front of him with admiration. Hearing this, Lu Shi's gloomy face darkened. He had previously said that no one in the Mountain River City's Xian Master Association was willing to accept the youth in front of him. Qin Feng glanced at the fervent old man in front of him. From the way the people around him addressed him, this old man seemed to be the president of the Mountain River City's Xian Master Association, Zhuosong. Qin Feng didn't say anything, but the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Instead, his gaze landed on the gloomy Lu Shi, and he said with slight surprise, "President Zhua, someone just said that no Xian master in Mountain River City would accept me. Qin Feng, if you say this, will it?" Zhuosong's snow-white eyebrows trembled. His two long eyebrows were like snow-white catkins. He frowned and looked at Lu Shi with a dignified gaze. Lu Shi's face became even gloomier. Occasionally, his gaze would sweep across Qin Feng, and it was as sharp as a sword. Zhuosong glanced at Qin Feng again. A light sigh flashed through his eyes as he sighed in his heart. This youth really doesn't know the dangers of the world. He's young and impetuous. How can he not understand that although a level 18 perfection innate mental strength is strong, it only means that he has great potential. In the end, he still hasn't matured. There are countless geniuses in the world, but not all of them can smoothly mature. Right now, he should be concealing his strength and biding his time. How can he still make enemies everywhere? The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. A genius who hasn't matured is still not a Xian master, no matter how great his potential is. I'm afraid he doesn't need a level 2 Xian master who can hold his own. Moreover, Lu Shi isn't an ordinary Xian master with no background. After a moment of silence, Zhuosong laughed and said, "Qin Feng, you may have misunderstood something. Brother Lu Shi is an upright person, and he is very clear about what he hates and what he dislikes. Normally, he is a little strict with his disciples, so you don't have to take it seriously." In the end, Zhuosong didn't want to offend Lu Shi too much. He was about to leave the Mountain River City's Mystic Association, so he didn't want to cause any more trouble. Qin Feng clearly noticed that the old man's tone was a bit cold. Previously, he had affectionately called him little guy, but now, in the blink of an eye, he had become Qin Feng. Qin Feng's mind was very sharp. He could guess Zhuosong's thoughts with just a glance. Regarding Zhuosong's mentality, he curled his lips. Swallowing humiliation and retreating was not his style. Moreover, sometimes, even if you were willing to swallow humiliation and humiliation, others would not come to find trouble with you. Lu Shi's face was gloomy and expressionless, but Qin Feng could tell that Lu Shi hated him to the core for humiliating him on the spot. It wasn't a good thing to be targeted by a Meridian's condensation rel powerhouse and a second-level mystic cultivator at that. Moreover, even Zhuosong, the president of the Mystic Association, was so afraid of him. It was obvious that this person was not easy to deal with. Moreover, he had already displayed such strong talent. Qin Feng believed that if he left the Mystic Association now, the latter would eliminate him at the root, even if they had to pay a certain price to prevent future troubles. Qin Feng had an extremely accurate grasp of people's hearts, so his guess was right. Lu Shi was a person who cared about his reputation and would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Someone had merely said something bad about him behind his back, and when it reached his ears, someone would find that the person who had spoken had his tongue cut out and died miserably by the side of the road the next day. Qin Feng had repeatedly gone against his wishes, so Lu Shi had long been unable to tolerate his murderous intent. In particular, the terrifying potential that Qin Feng had displayed made Lu Shi jealous and furious. He was determined to eliminate him at the root. A level 18 perfected innate spiritual power was too stunning. A few decades ago, a terrifying level 18 perfected innate spiritual power genius had appeared in the nearby Dinghai city. Now, that person was a level 6 mystic cultivator overseeing a region in the Mystic Association. Now that Qin Feng also had level 18 perfected innate spiritual power, didn't that mean that Qin Feng might also have a chance to become a level 6 mystic cultivator in the future? The highest level in the entire Kingdom of Yin was only a level for mystic cultivator. Even the Emperor of the Kingdom of Yin had to bow and salute a level 6 mystic cultivator. However, such a person still needed a process to mature. Zhui Song, Lu Shi, and many mystic cultivators in the hall understood this. Although the Mystic Association would provide some protection for extremely talented geniuses, they would ultimately not fight to the death with an extremely promising level 2 mystic cultivator for a genius who had yet to mature. In the hall, Qin Feng did not speak. Zhui Song frowned, and the hall was slightly silent. Many mystic cultivators stared at Qin Feng with pity. Sometimes being too talented was not entirely a good thing. Zhui Song looked indifferently at the youth in front of him and sighed. He thought to himself, what a pity. If you were a mystic cultivator, even if you were just an intern mystic cultivator who had just registered, the Mystic Association would have a reason to protect you. However, how can it be so easy to become an intern mystic cultivator? Even if you have level 18 innate spiritual power, you will need at least 1 or 2 years of contact before you can touch the threshold. Zhui Song did not want to have too much contact with Qin Feng, so he only gave him a few indifferent pointers and tried to persuade him before leaving. Lu Shi walked over and stared coldly at Qin Feng with a malicious gaze. That sharp and cold glint almost froze Qin Feng's soul. Qin Feng saw the naked threat and killing intent in Lu Shi's eyes. Qin Feng had underestimated Lu Shi's fear of the potential he displayed. If they were not still in the Mystic Association, Qin Feng did not doubt that Lu Shi would immediately kill him. I'll wait for you to walk out of the Mystic Association's door, Lu Shi said. His voice was indifferent, but his killing intent was bone-chilling. Behind Lu Shi, the young girl, Guan Ruolin, gestured with one hand on her neck. The cold glint in her eyes condensed into something tangible. It was sinister, cruel, and extremely pleased. I overdid it. Qin Feng mocked himself. Qin Feng raised his head and saw that the remaining people were also preparing to leave. They looked like they were afraid that he would find them. A cold smile flashed through his eyes. Did they really think that he, Qin Feng, was dead for sure? Suddenly, Qin Feng called out to Zhui Song, who was standing by the door. Hey, old man, the matter isn't over yet. Why are you running? Hearing this, the footsteps of everyone in the hall paused. Suddenly, everyone's gazes landed on that indifferent figure again. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Zhui Song turned around and looked at Qin Feng in confusion as he asked in bewilderment. Qin Feng, haven't you finished the mental strength test? You can leave the Mystic Association now. If you don't want to leave the Mystic Association and want to enter the library to learn more about mystic cultivators, you can ask at the counter. Someone will naturally bring you into the library. Old man, you might have misunderstood. Hearing this, Qin Feng blinked his eyes and smiled. I just wanted to ask you if I can continue with the test and assessment. What test? Zhui Song was stunned. Of course, it's the official mystic assessment, Qin Feng said confidently. Seeing that Zhui Song seemed to be dumbfounded, Qin Feng said uncertainly. Can't you just start with the official mystic assessment? That's fine. Let's take the internship mystic assessment first. It's so troublesome. A low-level mystic cultivator, like an internship, actually needs to take the assessment. Qin Feng muttered in dissatisfaction. The gazes of everyone in the hall suddenly froze. My new book is officially on track, so you can read it without worry. I guarantee that I'll keep updating. I've created a group. Welcome to chat and flirt with girls. Group number 533-129-7875-53129-7875. Chapter 61. Applying for the Mystic Master Examination. Not only was Song and Vice President Hua shocked, but even Lu Shi and Guan Ruolin stopped in their tracks and turned around to look at the youth in white in disbelief. Everyone in the hall looked at Qin Feng in a daze. If they were shocked by Qin Feng's level 18 perfected spiritual power, then his application for the Mystic Master Examination was shocking. Although a level 18 perfected innate spiritual power was rare, it was not unheard of. However, a 15-year-old trainee mystic master was unbelievable. Everyone knew that it was extraordinarily difficult to become an alchemist or a mystic master. To become an alchemist, a martial artist had to break through to the meridian stage and comprehend the heaven and earth seed of the wood and fire attributes. Only then would they be qualified to become an alchemist apprentice. The requirements for a mystic master's martial realm were slightly lower, but it did not mean that the threshold was lower. Instead, it was more demanding. In Shanha City and even the Kingdom of Yin, which had over 100 main cities, there was not a single 15-year-old trainee mystic master. Even the Sea Calming Supremacy, who later became a level 6 mystic master, only became a trainee mystic master at the age of 16. Taking a deep breath, Song's eyebrows trembled as he spoke with a grave expression. Little fellow, have you thought it through? The trainee mystic master examination is not a simple matter. Not only does one have to have enough spiritual power, but there are also certain requirements for the martial artist. Under normal circumstances, one has to break through to the 7th firmament of the martial Tao, because after that, one's body will be strengthened even further. Only then will one be able to withstand the exhaustion of the mystic master examination. 7th firmament of the martial Tao? Qin Feng chuckled, his eyes filled with confidence. I don't have that, but I have cultivated a mystic technique that conceals essence and restrains aura. It's enough to withstand this kind of exhaustion. Qin Feng was referring to the black tortoise's yin-yang Tao. He had refined a trace of the blood essence of the ancient mythical beast, the black tortoise. The black tortoise was a variant of the dragon tortoise. The tortoise race was one of the races with the longest lifespans and was best at concealing essence. Since you insist, then let's give it a try. It doesn't matter if you can't pass. Song heaved a sigh of relief. He actually hoped that Qin Feng could pass the Mystic Apprentice assessment. Unearthing a good seedling with innate level, 18 mental strength, and unearthing a genius mystic master were two completely different concepts. A 15-year-old Xian master trainee. Perhaps a Xian formation grandmaster who is even scarier than Venerable Ding Hai would appear in Shanha City. This was a good opportunity to show his face in front of his peers. In the future, Song would have a good reputation for being discerning. He might even be able to rely on this contribution to rise up the ranks. Song had a fervent look in his eyes as he spoke to his left and right. Men, immediately prepare for the Xian Master Assessment. Open the Xian door and prepare to activate the Great Void Disk. We will check from afar before entering the Great Void Mirror. Upon hearing this, several solemn-looking mystic cultivators dressed in black robes walked out from both sides and quickly entered a side door in the hall. The side door was connected to another slightly smaller hall. This was the Xian Master Assessment Field. Qin Feng, go in. Someone will tell you the details of the assessment. Song patted Qin Feng's shoulder. Then, the group of people arrived at a special hall on the second floor. The other mystic cultivators who wanted to watch the show followed closely behind. They wouldn't miss this show. "Teacher, what should we do?" Seeing that Qin Feng had really entered the assessment field, Lu Shi and his disciples' expressions changed drastically. Guan Ruolin suppressed the anger in her heart and asked, "Come, let's go up as well. I don't believe that this little bastard can really pass the Xian Master assessment." Lu Shi sneered. With a flick of his sleeve, he followed Qin Feng into the second floor. The hall on the second floor was a very peculiar hall in this world. The entire hall was spacious, and there were countless complex rune arrays drawn on top of each other. Countless mysterious runes covered the entire hall. The floor, the walls, and every inch of the hall was actually formed by various kinds of mirrors, making the entire hall look like a mirage. Entering the hall felt as if one had entered into another world. A stone pillar stood tall in the center of the hall. There was a transparent mirror on top of the pillar. With it as the center, there were stone pillars carved with complicated runes. This was a level 3 Xian formation called the Great Void Yin-Yang Illusory World Xian Formation. This formation had no other use. Its only use was to create an illusory Great Void world that could be used for the Xian Master assessment. The bottom was Yin and the top was Yang, one main and one auxiliary. If the examinee at the bottom could draw a real Xian formation, then its power would immediately be projected into the illusory Great Void world and form a Xian formation, simulating the power of the real Xian formation. And the people in front of the Great Void mirror would be able to feel the specific power of the Xian formation, as well as its advantages and disadvantages. The most peculiar thing was that they would not be harmed. Qin Feng, this is the first time you've come to the Mountain River City's Mystic Association, so you might not be too clear about the examination process. Now let us explain it to you. The examination for a Mystic Apprentice is actually very simple. As long as you can set up any one of the 365 basic Mystic formations that the Mystic Association has announced in the Great Void World, you can become a new Mystic Apprentice. If you can set up 3 or more basic Mystic formations, you can be called a low-level Mystic Apprentice. If you can set up 6 or more basic Mystic formations, you can be called a high-level Mystic Apprentice. If you can set up 9 or more basic Mystic formations, you can be called a top-notch Mystic Apprentice. Qin Feng followed his gaze and saw a small booklet called Basic Xian Formation Diagrams. Then, he opened it and saw strange formation diagrams on the paper. The first thing that entered his eyes was the 13 basic Xian formations that were known as the simplest. Earth Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Thick Earth Xian Formation Water Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Kuei Water Xian Formation Metal Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Tai Bai Xian Formation Wood Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Greenwood Xian Formation Fire Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Leaf Fire Xian Formation Ice Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Cold Ice Formation Lightning Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Lightning Fall Formation Wind Attribute Basic Xian Formation, Splitting Blade Formation. Other than the 13 types of basic Xian formations that were said to be the simplest, Qin Feng saw the Desolate Formation, Redwater Formation, Aurora Formation among the basic Xian formations that were known for their powerful attacks. No matter if it's a new Xian Master, low-level, high-level, or top-level Xian Master, you will receive the Gray Xian Master Trainee Badge from the Xian Master Association. You are allowed to wear Gray Xian Master Robes. A black-robed Xian Master explained expressionlessly. At the same time, another black-robed Xian Master had already prepared the assessment process. He pointed at a crystal altar that was located in the center of countless runic Xian formations. Qin Feng, you just have to enter this Xian formation and we will activate the Xian formation. You just have to condense your innate mental energy and you will be able to project it into the Great Void World. The rest will depend on your performance. After speaking, the two retreated to the side and stood solemnly. Hearing this, Qin Feng put down the basic Xian formation diagrams in his hands. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the crystal altar. Then, he sat down cross-legged according to the two's request. After Qin Feng finished his preparations, The two black-robed Xian masters nodded in unison. The two of them formed a mysterious Xian seal at the same time and activated the Xian formation. The runes on the towering stone pillars in the surrounding hall emitted a faint light. An invisible wave began to vibrate, resonating and forming a strange energy. The transparent prism in the center of the formation suddenly exploded with brilliance. It emitted a waterfall-like brilliance that enveloped the white-clothed youth who was sitting cross-legged on the crystal altar with his eyes closed. Qin Feng closed his eyes and condensed his mental energy. He felt his entire body tremble. Then, a bizarre dark whirlpool appeared above his head. A suction force appeared and wrapped his innate mental energy into a ball. It instantly sank into the dark whirlpool. After a violent tremor, he appeared on a gray and desolate land. Suddenly, Qin Feng had the illusion that the great void was the Tao, the primordial chaos was the heaven, yin and yang had yet to be determined, and the primordial chaos was the beginning of time. Chapter 62. The sky was gray and gloomy, and the endless barren land seemed to want to drown people. Qin Feng looked at this empty world in amazement. He moved his hands and feet slightly, and actually felt that it was exactly the same as the outside world. Whether it was the various feelings or the senses, they were all the same. Even the inner breath of the late-stage fourth firmament of the martial Tao could be simulated. Although the feelings that should be there are still, it still can't change the fact that I'm a spiritual body. Qin Feng sighed slightly. He was no stranger to the great void world. The great void world in front of him was just a void world simulated by a Xian formation in the eyes of outsiders. But he knew that this great void world really existed. A true martial arts expert could indeed open up a small world in his body. This kind of small world was also called the inner world, and the great void world was the inner world that the founder of the profound Tao, Ancestor Xian, opened up. However, what kind of figure was Ancestor Xian? If he was still in the world, he would already be a true demon god. The inner world that he opened up would definitely not be ordinary. The great void world in front of him was just an illusory world formed by a trace of the great void world's power that was drawn out by a Xian formation. It was half illusory and half real, and it was used for the trial. There was one advantage to taking the test in the illusory world, and that was that it could simulate countless spiritual items. As everyone knew, setting up a formation required the consumption of spiritual items and countless complicated procedures. If one did not use the illusory world and set up the formation outside, the consumption of spiritual items would be too much. Even with the wealth of the Mystic Association, they could not afford it. However, there was no need to worry about this with the illusory world. Moreover, the power and error of the Xian formation simulated by the illusory world were the same as the outside world. There was no difference. Just as Qin Feng was looking around, an invisible light suddenly bloomed in the illusory world. A path to the sky appeared, and the projections of Zhuo Song and the others appeared 300 meters away. With a slight smile, Zhuo Song's figure appeared at the front. He glanced at Qin Feng and said, "You can start now. Little fellow, you can start now. You only need to visualize here, and you'll be able to conjure any spiritual object you need to lay down the array. Of course, high-grade spiritual objects require the authority of a badge to receive. You haven't obtained any badges yet, so according to the rules, you can only conjure the lowest grade spiritual objects of heaven and earth." Qin Feng was startled. Subsequently, his mind moved and his eyes lit up. A spiritual light appeared in front of him, projecting a square frame that was emitting light in front of his eyes. Rare phase appeared in the options. Qin Feng's eyes swept through the frame, and he saw many colorful spiritual objects. His expression changed, and his gaze fell on a prismatic crystal that was sparkling and translucent like jade. This was the crystal jade he was most familiar with. Crystal jade was the most common material for setting up arrays. If there were no other spiritual items, crystal jade would usually be used as a substitute. Qin Feng casually pointed his finger, and a speck of spiritual light condensed in the air. Soon, a translucent prismatic crystal fell into his hand. His hand was sparkling and translucent. Traces of spiritual energy overflowed in all directions. This was a top-grade crystal jade. If it was placed outside, it would cost at least 1,000 taels of gold to exchange for one. Pharmacists and Xian masters were both professions that burned through money. If it wasn't for the existence of a place like the Great Void World, very few people would be able to afford this kind of expenditure. Qin Feng didn't choose any other spiritual materials. Instead, he took out hundreds of crystal jades. In the distance, Zuosong stared at Qin Feng's every move. Seeing him take out the crystal jades first, he couldn't help but nod, but soon frowned. It's actually a jack-of-all-trades spiritual material like crystal jades. What kind of basic Xian formation is this little guy trying to set up? All of them are spiritual materials like crystal jades. This doesn't fit the style of a newbie. Vice President Hua Air's face was grave and doubtful. Under normal circumstances, if one wants to set up a Xian formation with a corresponding attribute, most people would choose spiritual materials of the same attribute. This way, there would be a certain probability of success when activating the formation. For example, if one wants to set up a green wood Xian formation with the wood attribute, it would be best to use spiritual materials like 100-year-old spiritual wood to set up the formation. Not only would the formation be more stable, the flow of spiritual energy during activation would be smoother, and the corresponding success rate would also be higher. Although crystal jades are known as jack-of-all-trades spiritual materials, they can only be said to be ordinary in all aspects. Generally speaking, those who choose crystal jades to set up formations are either experts or hotheads. Hua Air and Zuosong looked at each other and then shook their heads. They selectively ignored the previous choices. But looking at that little guy's calm and collected appearance, he seems to be very confident. Did you notice his eyes? It seems that ever since he entered the Mystic Association, no matter if it was facing Lu Shi's difficulties, suppression, threats, or the Xian Master examination, his expression didn't change at all. Zuosong's heart was filled with doubts as he suspiciously stared at the expression on the white-clothed youth's face. Now that you mention it, it is indeed so. This little guy's state of mind is a bit too calm. Could it be that he really has the confidence to become a 15-year-old trainee Xian Master? Hua Air's body trembled, and his expression changed. This old man has a premonition that a famous Xian Master will appear in our Shana city. However, this little guy's background is mysterious. I wonder which great Xian Master is able to teach such an outstanding disciple. Zuosong gently stroked his snow-white brows that were beating his chest. His sleeves moved rhythmically, and a trace of a smile appeared in his eyes. Hua Air nodded slightly, calmed down, and smiled with slight excitement. Last year, two very outstanding young Xian Masters appeared in Ji Nation's Tiannan City. They became official Xian Masters at the age of 18. Our Yin Nation's Xian Master Association branch has always been mocked by those fellows, saying that our Yin Nation has no talent. This time, we might be able to hold our heads high. On the side, Zuosong smiled slightly and stroked his snow-white beard as he spoke. Let's continue watching. Look, that little guy is starting to make his move. His method of setting up the formation. Qin Feng didn't have the time to pay attention to the gazes of the people above. After taking down the spiritual materials, he checked the location of the formation. There was a lot of knowledge in setting up formations. It paid attention to the right time, the right place, and the right people. The so-called right time referred to the weather. At this moment, the right time in the illusory world was under his control, and there was no need to worry about the right place. The illusory world could simulate all kinds of terrains, so there was no need to worry at all. As for the right people, it was even easier. No one would disturb him here. Stone pillars were carved out one after another. As a Xian master, he couldn't not understand the way of runes, because only these runes were the bridge to connect the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to the Xian formation. These stone pillars were called the foundation of the formation, which was the foundation of the Qian formation. This step was very crucial. No matter if it was the position of the foundation of the formation or the rune carving, there couldn't be the slightest mistake. Once there was a mistake, the entire formation would have problems, and it might even cause it to collapse and self-destruct. Qin Feng was undoubtedly an expert in this field. No matter if it was setting up the foundation of the formation or carving the runes, they were all done in one go like flowing water. Watching him set up the formation was like arranging flowers, and it was a kind of elegant art. The group of people couldn't help but become intoxicated. Their eyes followed Qin Feng's every move, and they felt that Qin Feng's every move carried a strange aura. His method of setting up the formation was close to the way, and they couldn't help but become intoxicated. The Qian formation that Qin Feng chose had 6 foundation points. Qin Feng didn't take long to set up the formation, and he only took an hour to prepare everything. This speed was so fast that the group of black-robed Qian masters only felt that Qin Feng had finished setting up the formation in the blink of an eye. Expert. With just one glance, the black-robed Qian masters knew that the white-clothed youth in front of them wasn't some hothead, but an expert with extremely high attainments in the Qian formation path. To be able to set up the formation so smoothly, he definitely had immersed himself in the Qian formation path for a long time. Lu Shi's expression was abnormally gloomy. Lu Shi asked himself honestly, even he might not be able to set up the formation so quickly. However, Qin Feng was somewhat dissatisfied. If he was at his peak, he wouldn't even need any spirit items. He could directly draw runes in the air to set up a Qian formation and turn it into a restriction. Everything seemed to be done with ease. As for crystal jades, they were usually used as the formation core. Qin Feng casually took a piece of high-grade crystal jade and placed it in the center of the formation core. Everyone held their breaths as they watched the final step, which was also the most crucial step. Activate the formation. Activate the formation. Whether the Qian formation was successfully set up or not depended on whether the formation could be activated. Activating the formation required it to be done in one go, and the most crucial part of this step was the formation master's mental strength. Not only did it require the formation master to have sufficient mental strength, it also required the formation master to have extremely strong control over his own mental strength. If there was the slightest bit of sluggishness in the middle, the formation would collapse. Qin Feng's expression was calm, and his eyes were confident. His hands formed a seal, and with a clear shout, a formless fluctuation was emitted from the seal in his hands. At the same time, a white light was emitted from the formation core. In Qin Feng's spiritual perception, a formless spiritual energy was drawn out from the crystal jade. The water-like formless spiritual energy was controlled by his mental strength and began to flow towards the first formation core in the formation diagram. A white light erupted from the first foot of the formation and quickly spread to the second foot of the formation. One after another, the third, fourth, fifth, and even all 6 feet of the formation were quickly lit up. The faint white light that erupted from the 6 feet of the formation was like a pattern that was sketched out with a single stroke, forming a peculiar formation. The vital energy in the air vibrated endlessly. It's done. A few young Qian cultivator trainees couldn't suppress the astonishment in their hearts and shouted with wide eyes. This was a formation diagram that looked like a water droplet. A formless water vapor began to gather from the surroundings, bringing with it an aura that moistened all living things. Cool and moist. Water attribute. Sunflower Qian formation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.